Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
We were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here.
How many men have you killed, my lord?
I don't know.
50? 100? Countless.
Countless has a nice ring to it.
And how many lives have you saved?
500,000. Population of King's Landing. Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
Our time has come. We prepared. We grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power, you were trusted to lead the Republic. But you were deceived. You assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
The visions are clear now. I see possible futures all at once. Our enemies are all around us. And in so many futures they prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such time, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
Forgive me. I did not see. I have failed you all.
You will bring me. Captain Honor, I do not know what strength is in my net. But I swear to you, I will not let the White City fall. Our people failed. Our people. Our people.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins. No. Now it ends.
What's up, guys? Welcome to The Narrative, episode 48. Named this one the Genesis Mission. Another one I had so many notes for, I decided to basically toss them all out, but they're all in there somewhere. And they'll be recalled at the perfect time, I am sure. Before we get into the absolute madness tonight, I don't want anybody to run for the hills. I warned people in advance. I never should do that with tonight's guest. I should just spring him on them. Although, maybe we can talk about, it's either he has gone soft or you guys have become a little toxic. And I think we can talk about a little bit of that tonight. But for anybody who is not into talking about Bitcoin, get the fuck out of here. You should be into talking about it. But in fairness, we're going to talk about it in some ways that I think people in this audience are going to find really interesting tonight. I named it the Genesis mission after Trump's recent statement, not executive order yet, I don't think. But the Trump administration, in between all the stupid bullshit going on within MAGA, within fake MAGA, there's real signal being put out by the Treasury Secretary, our boy Scott, pretty much every week. And those executive orders in the White House website, who would have thought, is probably putting out the most consistent signal of anything out of the administration, while Trump is forced to sort of engage in this really dumb, humiliating back and forth with fake MAGA. I envy that guy with the patience that he has to not just come out and talk about the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about the plan. We're going to talk about how being called doomers is probably a signal that you're actually more in agreement with the plan than the people who think you're against the plan actually are. We're going to talk about the Genesis mission. We're going to talk about the intra-MAGA sifting and how it's all working, and whatever the hell else we want to. Couple housekeeping notes. I've been giving out the wrong email address. There's like 25 people or 20 people or so who ordered my book, who supported my Kickstarter campaign, and never filled out a survey and never sent me your address. Those books are at my house. They are in my basement. They're on a pool table, all packaged up and everything right now. So if you want those, if you did not receive your book yet, you should have. If you didn't yet, we've got a little batch going out tomorrow. Email realmrsburningbright@gmail.com. Don't email her if you're not one of those people. Unless you just want to bug her. But yeah, realmrsburningbright@gmail. I think I was saying real Mrs. Bright, which is not the correct email address. And we will check on your package if you did order. If you didn't give us your address, then we can't ship you the book. So yeah, that's it. And then before we get into tonight's show, we are brought to you tonight by our grudging friend, Jordan Sather. Maha yourself with supplements that don't suck from Conscious Strength. Founded by Badlands' very own Jordan Sather in 2019, Conscious Strength products are made in America and won't break your bank, unlike other online brands. The lineup includes collagen for strengthening joints and hair, electrolytes to get rid of cramps, greens powders that taste good and mix easy, Shilajit gummies, methylene blue, zeolite, and more. Flip the finger to pharma, be your own doctor, get supplements that you can trust from Conscious Strength. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/strength to shop now. That's badlandsmedia.tv/strength. We are also brought to you by our good friends at Rise Attire, who still have a Black Friday deal going on, I think overnight tonight and into tomorrow. So bookmark this, grab it either during the show or after the show, because it's a good deal and they got some good stuff going on.
Cheers, Badlanders. Ready to stuff your stockings with some new streetwear that'll really get the jimmies rustling? The holidays are here, and so is the new Rise Badlands collection, just in time to go walking in a winter wonderland. No matter where you're from, we're all Badlands natives with these brand new threads. Show up with the purtiest ugly sweater at the party with the Badlands Christmas collection. Or make your favorite Badlander buddy feel all warm and fuzzy with a variety of plush and Sherpa blankets to choose from. Plus, you can stack the classics under the tree, deck the halls with Devolution, rock around the Christmas tree with Rushmore, or have yourself a merry little clown world. Everything we do is custom made from scratch by the elves at our East Peoria, Illinois facility, who are all legal U.S. citizens. But the process takes time, so don't wait. Grab your gear today at badlandsmedia.tv/rise. Under the tree and over the target.
Thanks to our friends Rise for sponsoring the show. As always, we're going to do the guest tonight. Couple hours I'll keep them for, roughly speaking, and then I'll hang out with you guys for a little bit if you want to send over a rant or a boost or anything like that. We'll shoot the shit a bit before the Q boys get on later to talk about stuff that we're already going to blow open during the show. I should have told my guest as well that I tried coffee earlier to make me feel better because I'm coming down with something and it didn't work. So I switched to whiskey on a Sunday night. I will allow you to grab whiskey if you want to, G. But if you want to be more of an adult than I am, then that's totally fine.
Yeah, more of a tequila guy, but a little late notice there, so maybe I'll have to go grab a drink here in a second. But
Yeah, if you need a break.
yeah, that was
man, how's
funny.
it going?
It's good, man. It's good. That funny comment you made earlier about me not being toxic enough, or maybe the audience has built up some scars to potentially be numb to my wicked ways. I don't know.
Yeah, so G, I don't know if you had said this privately or publicly, but for people who were at Gart Cocoa Beach a few weeks ago, and then people watching the live stream, G was on a bunch of panels, and they were great panels. I think I was on one. Yeah, we were on one together. Yeah. They were great panels, and Bitcoin did come up, but this is why my theory is a bit of a mix. G had said after the panels, man, I don't know if I've gone soft, because all the comments and stuff in the Telegram chat and even in the audience that was in Florida were like, man, G, I really understand him now. I think I get him. And, people were cheering at what he was saying, and he's like thinking he's gone soft or something like that. I think that the audience is further along than you think. They're further toward you than you think on a principles mindset, maybe, right? Not so much on all the X's and O's yet, but in the principle, I think more of our audience is with you these days. And I also think, just to be blunt, it's kind of want it to be the sort of the opening section of the show here. The theme of 2025 to me that I didn't expect, I'll raise my hand and say I didn't think it was going to be as contentious as it has been sifting. There's been clear sifting. I think that's going on a macro level, nationwide, and within Badlands. We've seen it within Badlands hosts. We've seen it within the audience. And ironically, I think that, some of the people who used to leave comments or chat or literally in person tell you or tell us to tell you to curb the way you're speaking, there was basically nobody I can think of who has done that recently or in Florida. In fact, we got the exact opposite. So I don't know. I think maybe this is part of the sifting process that's been going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of noise out in the, info war, and it's like, how do people, there's only so many hours in the day. And so how are you going to expend the least amount of energy to get all the information you need to protect your family, right? Or to see, how you can, navigate this info war, right? Like, that's to me what this is about, is like, you could spend every day listening 24 hours a day and still not understand what you're listening to, right? Because there's so much of it. And so how do you sift through all that noise, right? And I think a lot of the rug pulls are helping bring people through that filter, right? And so it's been not only the rug pulls that are helping bring more people along with my message, with all the corruption and the exposure, that Trump is allowing on purpose, because it's an undomestication of the species, right? We're so awkward with what we think freedom is, and we trust everybody with just unchecked, authority. And over time, after it erodes so much, we stop trusting these people. And for me, I've always looked at the info war in a way to where I weigh things differently, So if they're talking about elections and they're talking about different countries, I know that I have no fucking clue whether they're right or wrong, or whether it's an op or what. I know I'm not in a skiff talking to these people. So even the emotional reaction I would have to it would not be maybe the intended target of the op, right? The op itself could be, catching some, some money launderer in a foreign country or whatever it is. And, I easily just, boom, filter that out. And that's why I've always been this black sheep, because I don't really care about a lot of that. I could care less, right? And so for me, I'm very attuned to what are they talking about, what problem does it solve, and what does the future look like? And if it doesn't hit those things, and if it's political, and if it's about infighting, or it's about an emotional reaction, I typically know this is not for me, right? There's nothing that's going to make my day better to try to get involved in this argument, right? I'm wasting my time and energy trying to solve something that is unsolvable or unpredictable, or even if you could predict it properly, it doesn't actually fucking matter.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? You made me think of, I've used this, I think I might have brought this up even at Gart, but Chris and I had done on Story Hour, we had done, what's it called? White Squall. Like, I think it was last year. It might have been this year, but it might have been last year. Obviously infamous in the Q community, infamous in the truth community. And one of the scenes in that movie, I didn't expect that movie to be as dark as it was. I thought it was going to be kind of like this fun coming of age movie, but like 3 or 4 of the crew members die and their kids. But there's a scene where one of them drowns that you're making me think of, where the ship is sinking and one of the kids is in the cabin and he's trapped and the water's coming up. And then there's another kid who's trying to get him out and he's trying to pull, but because of the suction, he can't pull. He's not strong enough to pull it. So he's screaming at the kid through the door, like, you have to push from your side. We both have to do it or I can't move the door. And the kid on the sinking ship is just screaming. He's panicking, which you can't blame him. So he doesn't brace himself and he drowns. He dies. The reason I think of that, I guess, is, John talks about the devolution sandwich. Chris talks about, sort of the mandate from Trump, the feedback loop, where it is an engine, like it's this two-sided engine. It's not just patriots and God kings coming to save us. But I think, you as a microcosm within Badlands, you say you don't care, and I get what you're saying. I think I know what you mean. But I think that is a piece of why people can misunderstand you sometimes in this audience. And of course, more people understand you more now than they did. But it makes me think of that scene because I think of you that way as saying, in your mind, you're already going to the end state, right? Like you're going to the end state or the beginning state, however you want to frame it. It's kind of the same thing, right? The beginning of the problem, in your view, would probably be the corruption of money, the corruption of reality itself, which means the end of the problem is there, right? And I think so much of this audience and so many people get pulled into MAGA either through politics or culture, even religion. Some people get pulled in that way. And like they're trying to pull the door open like from the top down, and you're trying to push it from the bottom up. Like you're not trying to pull with them, and they see it as dooming out. They're like, why aren't you helping us pull this door open? Anyway, it's weird that it made me think of that, but just I think that might be a piece of it where it's like we are, a lot of the people who misunderstand you or even get angry when you say stuff like that, like you don't care about what's going on in American politics. I think that if they know that you're trying to open the same door, you just think that opening it the way they're opening it, the way they're trying to open it, is never going to work.
Yeah, and I really think we're in a war. This is a battle, and so I think a lot of MAGA is literally stuck on a green grass field somewhere, like picking daisies, and like they're spending all this energy looking at every daisy, picking it up, deciding whether to keep it or throw it away, or like trying to analyze all this crazy stuff. While they want to be in the war, they want to fight the war, and they're not like actually doing anything that matters. You're basically like, taking wooden sticks and trying to beat down a steel door. Like it's just not going to work. And I'm over here going like, guys, like there's a end around we can go to beat them, but you guys have to like ascend from your old way of thinking in this kinetic warfare, this political warfare, in these different realms, because that's not where the battle space is anymore. The battle space has moved on, and you guys are still thinking in this 4th generation warfare. Well, we've moved on from that, and I see people online yelling and screaming, and I call people, yelling into the wind. You don't have any power in that realm. And so you're literally just wasting your energy. And that's why I troll MAGA all the time. I troll Bitcoiners all the time, right? Because they're not actually doing anything that makes sense, and it's funny because Quas talked about it. I brought it up with him, and he's like, look, each one of these people, they have their special place because as soon as they figure it out, like their community will look to that person to help guide them on this new path, which made a lot of sense. But, he's even said, even though they're trying to help, they're not really helping. Like it was so funny to me that he said that, because it was like, yes, like, I understand what you're saying, right? As a wartime general, like he understands his battle space, and it's like, I think the MAGA movement is one of the greatest movements ever. And I think these people are my people. And I want these people to fight for the good of this country. But if you are fighting in a way that doesn't actually give you any power, like, you're just fucking wasting your time, bro. And so, yeah, I call people out because I don't waste my time with idiots trying to, use wood sticks against a steel door.
Yeah, and what's funny is I've mentioned this before on shows, on panels, etc. But what's kind of funny, people can say like, "Oh, well, you like GMoney because you two get along and everything." I mean, we do. I consider G a friend. I like him, but we argue a lot. Probably less now, maybe than we did. Like, we're probably pretty converged on
in the beginning we had some pretty contentious arguments for sure.
But even like the other day we were kind of going back and forth about sort of the that Twitter thread John and I were talking about, but for totally different reasons than this sifting is going on, right? Like you're talking about certain people that might be read in on things, and but it's kind of funny, like when we argue on the back end, that's part of that, like that sifting process that I think is good. There's the sifting of people that I think is happening. And when you're talking about like pushing up daisies, essentially, I think of it that way. I really have come to think, and it's not to be a callous asshole. I used to be Great Awakening means everybody. We're all moving into this awakening era, aware of where we're going. 95% of us, 4 to 6% lost forever. Like, I took that pretty literally. And I'm not there these days. These days, and I don't consider it a negative thing. I don't mean this negative. I really have come to believe it is a small percentage of people who change the course of history. That doesn't mean 10 podcasters, but it means 5% of the population. I mean, that's a fuck ton of people. That's a lot of people who really know what's going on, who really know how to rob power from these people, which we might get into, but I think there's the sifting of people of saying that's not necessarily a bad thing, of saying like, we're not leaving these people behind permanently. We're no longer allowing them to hold us back from the discussions we think we need to have about the future. And then if we're right, if we're wrong, then it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to anybody, right? We just fucked off and it doesn't matter to you. If we're right, then it means we might be able to affect the future that you end up in. So it's kind of a win-win. And I think the other sifting I reference with, you and I as a microcosm, me and John argue, me and Chris argue, like, a lot of us argue on the back end. That, I think, is a sifting of ideas, which when you mention like trying to beat down a steel door, like you're not going to get through any barrier without energy. And the theme of GART privately for us at Badlands became friction. In a good way. We talked about that as a group and defined that as a group of saying the only people left here are ones who can engage at like full cognitive power with each other and maybe not even agree, but some energy is coming out of that, like energy that is maybe helping us break down some of these barriers, that we haven't been able to before by trusting plans and thinking in terms of unity.
Yeah, I think, the example you bring up about us kind of arguing in the back channels was, the way I put things together in my head is I look at individuals, I look at kind of their past, I looked at what they've done, and I'd be like, wow, like this specific incident that happened to them in the past gives them this like plus 1,000 like weighted scale to what that specific op was back then. Now, the same particular person is arguing about like some political thing or like election fraud or something. And I'm like, that I give like maybe a +1, where like he's already got this like +1,000 for this other thing and this huge piece of the puzzle. And then like, so when you guys are arguing about stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't even matter. Like you forgot what he did previously that put us in this amazing spot where we're at today, because that is such a big piece of where we're at. And so like, these other little squabbles that happen, it's funny to me because I'm like, yeah, that doesn't even matter, guys. I mean, I guess it's if you guys are bored and you want to do something, go ahead and try to argue that out. But like at the end of the day, like who gives a shit, right? Because it doesn't even equate into anything moving forward.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I go back and forth on it, even in my own head. I go back and forth on it. Like fighting these battles sometimes, like you and me and Chris talk about this a lot. Sort of like, when is an argument worth it, and when is it just wasting energy? Like I sort of think of it, in the intro to the show, I've got all my favorite genre stuff and fantasy stuff in there. Because for me, I've only realized this in hindsight, but I think what really attracted me to fantasy and stuff like that is like those stories, or even historical myth. It's all first principle stuff, right? Like Leonidas and the 300 Spartans. Like, you don't need, like, anybody can watch that and get something out of it. You can like think super deeply about it or surface level. And I kind of think of the info war like that shield wall of like, okay, that's how I used to think of it. We all got to move in lockstep together. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, there's shock troopers like the Spartans who move forward and basically carve a path. I said on last week's show in my solo section, that tip of the spear thing that's so like everyone says that. Right. Tip of the spear. But do we really think about what that means? I think it really means what you're hitting on, which is like, go forward as far as you can go. But I will say, like, if we only have people just charging forward, I do think you need people on the wings, like cleaning up the Persians, right? No offense, because I know you're one of these Middle Easterners, but like you need
the supply lines to stay in line, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't only have shock troopers who go forward, because they'll eventually get caught behind enemy lines. Everything closes in around them, and it's like, hey, it's great that you guys went all the way in this direction, but nobody followed you because they didn't know where you were going. So I do think there is a bit of a mix of like pushing forward as the tip of the spear, but also maintaining some level of structure of like, what's going on back there? All right, let's go mop this up. And my example of that this past week, and me and John had fun with this on Wednesday night. Like the whole Emerald Robinson Twitter thread. Some people got mad at us. Like, opinions vary on it. My only takeaway from it, it's kind of what you're saying. It's just I had fun engaging with it directly of saying, man, if we're actually at the point in the narrative where we are to believe a guy sailed through an impossible storm with some Venezuelan refugees to save the 2024 election, I'm willing to call that out. And maybe that's wasting energy, but it also might be the point of them dangling this shit out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the larger op there too is just exposing how corrupt the election system is to itself. It's just a complete joke. It's a sham that Venezuela is even in the picture for American political elections alone, right? Like,
right.
The whole thing is just completely ass backwards. And so, no, it cracks me up. But I always look back. I always turn around and I'm like, guys, you guys can move up like a mile. Like, I've already cleared this territory over here. Like, just like walk through it, walk over the dead bodies, and like come over, because I collect scalps and I put them up and show them, right? Like, hey, like I owned another Q-tard about this thing, whatever it was, right? But a lot of my stuff is also built upon open source sound information, because I do trust that there is a plan, but it's not just an open blind trust. Like, my plan doesn't fully trust Trump to a degree, right? Because I tell him to fuck off with his taxes and stuff, right? So it's not like every single one of my choices is dependent on a person. It's all about trust through verification. And Trump has done nothing but show us that he's doing exactly what that end goal mission is. Right now, he's not doing it the way maybe I thought it was going to happen, right? But you never win the war you think you're going to win it anyway, as Michael Saylor would say. And so, like, you just kind of have to adapt to it and be like, oh, well, this makes sense, And sometimes we get so like zeroed in on our path that we forget about the world around us, and we're like, dude, these people don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, I'll be honest, man. I have conversations with people that I meet at a bar here and there, and they're like, dude, like, where are you coming from, man? And I'm like this alien form to them, because they don't get it, right? And so it's kind of I've noticed that lately, to where I just feel like I'm drifting kind of from like normal people that have like jobs and stuff, and I'm just like so far outside of that realm. They're like,
right,
what?
It's kind of funny in the context of Thanksgiving too. Like, that'll do that when you're around maybe some more normies than you would normally be, normies that you have a connection with. Than you would be, and you're like trying to converse with them about regular stuff, and you're like, man, how far do I go here? But you just mentioned a couple of things that I think are great for sort of this beginning section here. So I mentioned like this sifting theme going on in MAGA, and I want to hit on something that you just said. You said a term, and it's funny because I wrote a note down about it: Q-tards. And what's so funny is I don't want people to run away. I don't want Q people to run away and run for the hills. Keep in mind that the guy who just said that is wearing a 17 hat on the show right now, and he's not doing that as a troll. Okay? He is a Q guy. And
I'm literally my own Q-tard, yeah.
This is something though that, and I'm not the same as you, like, you know, you've got the whole Kafefi dig and everything, came at it from a completely different angle. But as we've seen in the Power Hour, even for the last year or so, like I'm the Q guy on the Power Hour, and yet a lot of Q people have really come after me in the last year and change. I don't think most of them are earnest, but I do think some of them are. Some of them are like confused when I say something like that. You know, I might not say Q-tar, but I'm like, man, Q people. And I can get it in a micro when Q people are like, aren't you a Q guy? Wait, aren't you wearing a 17 hat? What are you talking about? But I want you to explain what you mean when you say Q-tards and when you go after MAGA, because I think there's two important little signals here to be positive with people. G said in his intro, without me even prompting, which is one of my notes, you do think Trump is allowing, I literally wrote that term down. I said, the intra-MAGA sifting, these are my notes. Intra-MAGA sifting, who's doing it? Who's allowing it? In parentheses, Trump. And you said that independently before I did, right? So like you think that there is a Patriot plan, you think the Q drops are a big part of it, and you think Donald Trump is a big part of it, but you still do have that mindset that there is such a thing as, you know, Magadonians, and there is such a thing as Q-tards. And I wonder like how you separate those things. How do you think of them?
Yeah, I make it really simple, right? Like a Q-tard is a Q person that only trusts the plan and does not have any Bitcoin. Okay, literally, like it's very simple. It's a very simple litmus test. If you only follow and believe in Q and the military is coming to save you and blah, 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 and that's it, and you think gold and everything else is the way to go, like I literally call you a Q-tard because you haven't actually taken the drops, digested them, and made your own assumptions with them. You have only followed and regurgitated what Q has said. You haven't actually formulated a thesis that makes any sense to the end of this. Because I'm always looking for someone that actually gives me some other outcome than mine, you know, which is like the replacement of the monetary system. Like show me a bigger, more biblical thing than that. And I troll them on purpose because out of the MAGA people, the Q people, in my opinion, are literally like the smartest of the bunch, right? Like I consider these people like the top tier people of that bunch, but then I get disappointed because they don't understand the next level of that operation, which is sovereignty, which is all over the drops, which is 1776, which is all over the drops, which is like, this isn't just a plan for America. You know, this isn't just an American plan. This is a worldwide plan. And if there was a worldwide plan that gave us technology that ended 1,000 years of fucking slavery, wouldn't some of you people be more hyped up about this technology and stop thinking about in terms of elections and midterms and all this bullshit that doesn't make any like sense? Because I mean, who knows if we have a midterms, AI could replace all of them by then. We don't know the leaps and bounds that AI is growing. We know Genesis is coming. We have Bitcoin. We have all these different like things that are out in the open. There's no secret with some of this stuff. Donald Trump has confirmed it multiple times over at this point. And for me, I'm honestly very disappointed because you know, when I started in this movement, I never wanted to be on, you know, talking about this stuff or doing it. But like, you know, these people were like, fuck, man, these people, I want to be in my foxhole. Like, I feel like we're fighting a war. Like, how do we get out of this? Like, what are we supposed to do? And, you know, it just seems like after Trump lost, everybody just kind of like gave up to a sense. And then when he got reelected, like, yeah, he's back. Military's coming. I'm like, what? So you like
based on the same system that robbed him in the first place.
Right. And so they keep going back into these trust and authority and rank and file of this proof of stake network that we come in. But no, that's really kind of the simple litmus test. And I do it on purpose to like trigger them. But like in reality, when they actually look at my feed and they realize like I'm a Q guy as well. Like
yeah. Most of your feed, literally guys, before the show, just for a couple, I was going to look for some stuff that I remembered over the last few weeks that was related to the financial system and some of this Genesis stuff. But I was like, let me just start on G's feed. And like half of his tweets over the last 2 weeks is Q stuff, like 17s, drops, pictures of drops. And again, not trolling. And that's I think the thing. And again, the DPH version of this with Chris John and I, we talk about the election system a lot, but not in terms of how do we fix it and let's analyze the election system or whatever. Like, to me, that is this kind of closed loop Ouroboros pattern that you're kind of talking about in the Q level with the election system stuff. That's why we don't really get into the nuances of like, what about this machine and what about this scandal and what about that scandal? Like, hey, if you want to do that, fine. Maybe it's going to help in the future. But for us, it's like just maintaining the stance of, as Chris Paul wrote a whole Substack a few days ago or a week ago, the elections aren't real. Elections are fake. They're fake. They're fake. They're fake. They're fake. They're fake. They're fake.
For 100 years.
Yeah. It's like there's no, and again, Chris has said this a million times. There is no such thing as a little bit fake, right? And to apply this to something like money, again, when you use the word Bitcoin, some people get triggered. But let's use the word money. We would all understand, like your lowest IQ truther understands on some level that if there is a deep state and a cabal and the globalists, etc., that the entire engine that powers that machine is monetary, right? Like a 10-year-old kind of starts to understand that, right? The bad guys in a cartoon, for God's sakes, are usually stacking gold or looking for money or trying to steal something. Like it's materialist, it's money, it's the bankers, and people in the Q, like the Q drops themselves talk about ending the endless. They talk about the Federal Reserve. They talk about irregular warfare, counterinsurgency, all the things that have gone into your digs. And it's just funny because people can look at people like you with money and people like us when we talk about elections being fake and say, you're dooming out, you're saying there's no plan. When our point is, no, we don't think you're helping the plan. We think the plan is to get rid of this shit. Like, right? We're talking about the election system and you're talking about the monetary system, right? And the monetary system, you could argue, really is the baseline, the foundation of which everything else springs up, including the election system.
And for me, it's all about power and sovereignty. When Donald Trump made his announcement, he said, I am here to give power back to you, the people. And are elections ever going to give power back to the people? No, not in any sense of that word, right? And if we're interested in power and we're interested in sovereignty and we're interested in what that looks like, what other technology gives people power and sovereignty, right? There is no other power or technology on the planet besides kinetic weapons, okay, that actually gives the individual that property. But it's more than that because now this technology is unconfiscatable. It's untaxable. And, another thing that irritates me with MAGA is, they don't talk about the taxes. They don't actually fight Trump back when he says stupid shit. I'm a 100% Q believer, 100% Trump is on board. And I troll Trump all the time saying, that is stupid. Why are you doing that? Why are people not fighting this back? And it cracks me up because like they think I'm attacking Trump and I'm not helping. And it's like, no, the whole idea is to bring awareness to the situation of slavery that you currently reside in, yet you refuse to wake up from. And Trump is doing 1,000 different things besides coming out and telling you that to help push some of you guys through that filter to be like, oh shit, maybe I should stop like relying on politicians to save my ass. And maybe I should go look at how to save myself. How do I protect my energy from constantly being exploited from a system of theft and corruption? Do any of these people want to hold these politicians accountable? Like, does anybody want some sort of recourse against their government? And you're not going to find it any other way. You're not going to find it through voting. You're not going to find it through paying your taxes. You're not going to find it through your local elections. You're not going to find any settlement layer.
Take over the school board, G.
Yeah.
We take over the school boards.
Yeah, free snacks on Fridays. Yeah. And, the only way you can do this in a peaceful way that it forces you to have the moral high ground too, because you literally just opt out. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to put my time and energy in a system that is incorruptible, that nobody can mess with. And then I'll let Clown World duke it out. Like literally, I'm like the guy, what's that Indian guy on the back, like watching, everybody fight in the background. And I'm just like, hey, enjoy the show, man. Right. Because that's what's happening.
I want to get into, especially in the back half of the show, we've got some stuff I think that'll tantalize you guys that I've probably said in asides and G has said before on his shows about Satoshi and tying some of this into Q and the plan, because I think you guys will be into that. But before we get there, I want to focus in on kind of this sifting that's going on. And we are going to take aim at Bitcoiners as well. So I think it's fair to do that, right? Because we're talking about, we're both MAGA people, truthers, however you want to define this shit, who are also highly critical of our own, right? I like how you kind of laid that out, where you're like looking at Q people, and I do think you're right that it's almost like disappointed is the right word, where you're like, man, the power level is there. Like I was a big fan of Dragon Ball Z. It's one of my Dragon Ball Z guys when I was a kid, and these are like warriors who basically anytime they lose a fight, they get stronger. They have like energy powers and everything. So it was an awesome show to watch growing up. Japanese anime, of course. I was like, it was blowing my mind as a little American kid. But one of the ideas there is that like there's a character who is has like the most potential of any of them, but he doesn't like fighting. And so the warriors like hate him and they're like, oh, you hate him because he's weak, right? His name's Gohan, by the way. He's Goku's son. A lot of GBZ guys will know this in the chat. And they're like, man, why is he so disappointed in his son? And it's like, well, because he's strong. He's not disappointed because he's weak. He's disappointed because he's strong, and he does not want to do the work to actualize the power. Where the father in the show is like, you can be twice as strong as me,
right,
and do more good than I can do, but you won't do it because you're being lazy. But I'm interested in your thoughts on Trump before we move on to the Bitcoin sifting. Yeah. There is this MAGA sifting going on. I'm going to tease it because I've been using Nick Fuentes as the patron saint of the current sifting. He's not the only one, right? But he is certainly emblematic of the new America first, MAGA is like Trump isn't enough, etc. Says a lot of base things, but then also says stuff like this, and I could not believe that this was not AI. As far as I am aware, this is real, and this is from your feed, but I saw this the other day.
Would you make Bitcoin the U.S. currency?
No. I believe in fiat money, generally.
Would you make it legal tender?
Probably not.
So, like, try to leave the Bitcoin aside.
Yeah.
I can honestly say, I don't think I have seen a public, like MAGA or America First person ever volunteer that they like fiat money.
Well, believe in it, first of all.
Believe in it. Like I've heard people say, we got to go to gold-backed currency. We got to go back to the gold standard. We got to rein in the Fed and audit the Fed, right? Like the Ron Paul kind of type of thing, the Peter Schiff thing. Like I can get where they're coming from, but I've never seen somebody purporting to be anti-system say, I believe in fiat money. And to me, that was like the end of the argument of, is there a coordinated effort to undermine Trump by people who are maybe not who they represent themselves as? That 11-second clip might be the biggest hint of anything else that's been going on.
Well, and there's a follow-up clip too. And so I'll explain this too, because I posted it earlier today. You'll see it there about his status policies. But anyways, what's funny about Fuentes is I was on board with his message, most of it actually. Okay. My kids were talking about it. It was really affecting them. And a lot of us know that Zionists are a big problem, and that these, the problem of anti-Semitism, all that stuff was very taboo before. Right. And so Nick has done like leaps and bounds in moving that over to the window. Okay. But I always have like this, my ace in the hole, man. Right. It's always like, what's going to happen if the Bitcoin question comes up? Right. Because that's always been my white hat dog whistle. Right. Because I'm like, okay, he sounds good. He's probably part of some psyop. Like I'm on board with it. Right. And then as soon as I said the clip, I was like, whoa, what? Wait a minute. Right. Because that's where I go.
There it is.
That's a +1. That's a +1. Oh, that's a +1,000.
Yeah.
Right. Weighted to that specific fucking comment to where I'm like, whoosh, he's gone. Right. He's literally gone from the equation, because I know then and there, which people could say, oh, I knew before you, GMoney. I knew this. And I'm like, okay, well, like, did you really? You didn't.
Right. We didn't know.
Did.
Yeah.
And so for me, a agent of chaos psyops like him that is promoting a system of statism, right, is 100% in line with the cabal's plan. And if you find that in the clip I played, you'll see exactly what I mean. It literally flows.
It's on your feed?
Yeah, it's on my feed. I think I posted it today, actually.
Let me see. Is it of Fuentes?
Yeah, it's the people have to believe
in
the If you play that, it literally tailwinds with what you just posted.
Man, you gotta. Well, I'll ask this question on the back end of this.
Okay.
The problem with libertarianism is that liberty is not the highest political virtue. The highest political virtue is order. That is the greatest ordering principle. That is the greatest governing principle. Order. Order comes first. Liberty comes second. And order has to be maintained by a powerful state. Order has to be maintained by authority. And where does authority proceed from? Force, guns, overwhelming force, power that comes out of the end of a rifle, and legitimacy. The people have to believe in the authority of the state. And if these things are being undermined by freedom, by liberty, then you don't get liberty. And people like to say that Ben Franklin thing about liberty and safety, liberty and safety. It's about order and disorder. Forget about safety and liberty. It's about order and disorder. And what Hobbes writes is that even a bad order is better than disorder, than chaos, than a war of all against all, a total collapse of authority. Because do you know what happens when the power goes out? Rape. Okay? Rape, murder, looting, pillage, marauding, barbarism, an orgy of the crowds, an orgy of violence and chaos and hatred and anger. Okay, it's like the kinds of war crimes in Abu Ghraib. Okay, it's like the kinds of war crimes committed in Vietnam, in Iraq. When you have a total collapse of order, you get things that it's beyond human comprehension. So this is a very free country. This is one of the freest countries to ever exist. And the problem is that those things are starting to become undermined. The authority, the force and the legitimacy that founds the authority of the state, which holds the country together, which enforces the laws. And libertarians, they have a little bit too much faith in people and a little bit too much faith in the individual. I don't believe in the individual. And I'm individualistic, but I'm not an individualist. Individualism only makes sense in a white, Christian, patriarchal society.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
and this is actually a very important clip, okay? Because I have a very hard time understanding proof of stake versus proof of work, right? And this, I think, is one of those building bridges to where here is someone that wants to hand over power and authority to the state, right? He wants to have a political system to where a small group of people get to change the rules for everybody else. And this is a gentleman who is either like 100% on the payroll or completely ass backwards in his understanding of what's going on. And I think it could be both, right? It could be they psyop a guy who knows that he's not going to understand it, and they are going to make him do that. And so this is 100% a very important clip because it absolutely connects with the Bitcoin clip, and it absolutely shows your line of thinking. And with your earlier point, not everyone's going to get it, man.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to get access to layer one Bitcoin because it will be the small percentage of people that move this forward, and it will be those small percentage of people that have all the power. And thank God, okay, that the people that will have that power will be different than the current ones. Okay. And I mean that in a very like spiritual, deep understanding. Now, they're not all going to be good guys, but I can tell you the new sifting of that power source will be way different than what the current makeup is. And that's assuming that those people actually make it through, you know, Trump's executive order 13818, and they actually get to keep their coins at the end of this. And so, but clips like that absolutely show the difference and help bridge people to proof of work.
Yeah, man, it's funny, and I know a lot of people in our audience, and it's not just in chat, but in person. I brought Fuentes up in Cocoa Beach, and you know, brought him up on a couple of panels, and just to illustrate some points I was making. You're right that we don't. I said at the time, like, I don't know, and in the back of my mind, I reserve like maybe he's running sifting ops for us, maybe he's clearing the battlefield, kind of like you mentioned earlier, in a certain direction, like a shock trooper. And hey, the beautiful thing about first principles is that some of these people that are trying to undermine us, or might be trying to undermine us, the American people, the sovereign people, they might accidentally do a lot of good work on the way to trying to earn our trust, right? So the white pill on the end of whatever I think of a Fuentes and his ilk is that I've always said, if they are trying to pretend to be you as a movement have already attained a certain level of power that they did not want you to attain, right? Because the state in terms of the liberal-minded state, the rhino neocon state, that state, it never used to pretend to be MAGA. It never used to pretend to be sovereign-minded or America first or nationalistic or any of this kind of stuff, right? Which isn't the end game of sovereignty, but you mentioned the word bridge. Those are like bridges to sovereignty, right? You start thinking of nationalism, and you're like, well, okay, well, why is nationalism a thing? It's like, well, we're thinking that there's something unique about an American compared to a Brit. Okay, well, doesn't that mean the individual too? And you start working your way backwards. But that clip, it is illuminating, and the reason I brought Fuentes up, not just at GARP, but I brought him up in the summer, is I think it comes from my kickboxing days and martial arts days. I am like a threat assess minded person. When I see somebody get thrust into the zeitgeist, sometimes it's good and part of the plan or organic, and sometimes it's not. And with Fuentes, I noticed in early summer, the YouTube algorithms were blasting him into the zeitgeist. And I had said on the show last week in my solo section, I was on Gab after I got kicked off of Twitter back, whatever that was, 2020, I guess. I was on Gab for like a year. And that's where I first heard of guys like Fuentes and a lot of guys in that orbit. And on Gab, 90% of the comments were like super base stuff. Then it would be a bunch of shitcoin stuff, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't even know what it was. I just ignored it. Shilling crypto stuff. And then it would be the Jews, and you'd be like, okay, I get it. I understand. And then they would start doing this. They would start being like, the only way forward is for an ultra powerful state to come down on your enemies. And I'd be like, guys, aren't you like selling yourselves as super based, like constitutionalist Americans? But I will say, I had not seen that clip until you played it there. I have not seen one of them say it that emphatically and you can tell, like, toward the end of that rant, he maybe realizes it's not coming out the right way. And he's like, well, I mean, we need the state, but people have to believe in the state too. And man, that's incredible. I've shit on libertarians before, but the reason I shit on libertarians and some Bitcoiners, which we'll talk about, is I think they are naive. I don't think they're wrong morally when they talk about the individual and individual power. Sometimes I think they're naive of thinking, man, I mean, it's funny, actually, I think it was a Department of Defense or Department of War. Chris Paul sent me a Twitter post they put out of the scene in the Two Towers I always talk about on this show. but it's where Pippin says, hey, this war's too big for us. Maybe we should go home. Maybe we should go back to the Shire. And Merry says, there won't be a Shire, Pippin. That's the scene I always use against Bitcoiners and against libertarians of saying, if you think you should ignore the state completely, you might end up with the scouring of the Shire. But you never go full Fuentes, because I think he just took the mask off a little bit there.
Oh, 100%. And, it really is these shamans that they're going to put in front of you to exploit your belief system, because we have Trump in office now. And a lot of people are somewhat happy with what he's doing. I think a lot of people would say he's doing a positive job, but I would agree with that. But there's still things he's doing that are pissing a lot of people off. It's like, why isn't the Epstein files being released? Why isn't Kash Patel exposing the Charlie Kirk? Like, those are serious problems, and I think, they're intentionally leaving that open to show you the flaws in a system to where you continually hand over your power and authority to someone else to make those rules for you. And that's where Fuentes comes in and is full on fascism, hand over your power and authority to a small group of people to control and run and make all the rules for everybody. Yeah. And that is the complete antithesis of what Bitcoin and this entire movement is, right? Like, full stop. Yeah. And it's like, those are certain weighted averages where I go, okay, this motherfucker, all the stuff, like the 95% of stuff that I may have agreed with, just all went to shit because of those two clips. And that's how easily my mind can be like made up and move and adapt, because it is that easy. If you assign the Bitcoin signal to everything, because that is the foundation of truth, okay? The foundation of truth, power, sovereignty, and all that is this technology. And if it deviates from that in a way that is the antithesis of it, then it's 100% a bad apple, in my opinion.
Man, I don't mean to be a dick with this with people, but I guess I do. I guess I don't care. What you just said there in terms of throwing it all out, once for you, you have like, this is the red line, and you crossed it. There is so much pushback that we get when we form conclusions about figures. Like, again, Wednesday night, John and I did a whole show on that Twitter thread. I don't know what the intentions are, right? I'm just looking at the information and trying to be objective about it and say, if you want me to believe that Patrick Byrne and 3 Venezuelans saved the 2024 election, which was fake, de facto, you are lying or you're a fucking idiot, right? Like, those are the two options. Now, you could be lying for good reasons, in which case you lying as part of the plan, as Chris Paul would say, me questioning your lying can't undo your plan, right? If telling the truth is a threat to the plan, it's not a very good plan. If this bullshit story about sailing fucking Venezuelans in to save Donald Trump is part of the plan, then maybe part of the plan is people like us calling it out and calling attention to it. But, like, there's the most age-old example of people deceiving as part of strategy is the Trojan horse. It's become, it's a thing in our just vernacular, right? And what I think a lot of people, and I will say especially Q people and MAGA people, don't get is that the people who are the best deceivers, 95% of what they say is great. And 95% of what they do is great, right? Like, the Trojan horse needs to be let into the gates.
Yes, right.
That's the whole point. And I think that, there are probably times when I like lock my lasers on a figure, let's say, and I'm wrong. Like, I'm being too suspicious. But guess what? If they're telling the truth, their principles and their behavior and their statements are going to win out over my skepticism. They're going to win. They're going to survive my skepticism, just like the ledger will survive any skepticism thrown at it. If you can't survive honest skepticism, then you were false to begin with, right? And it's like, if you check on the Trojan horse before you let it in the gates, if you see what's inside of it, it can't hurt you. and then you can let it inside. But if there's somebody inside of it with spears, then maybe you don't let it in the gates. And I think, I know it sounds so simple and even insulting to some people, but man, you guys in chat can see anytime somebody at Badlands questions a figure that Q people or MAGA people have put on a pedestal, there is a clutching of pearls that should be embarrassing for people to express. Where it's like, if you're right about this person, whether it's a Kash Patel, a General Flynn, an Emerald Robinson who's going to save the world with Twitter threads, like whoever it is, they can survive skepticism if it's honest skepticism. And if they can't survive the skepticism, they weren't part of the plan. Okay? And I think that this goes into a lot of the first principles that brought you ultimately to that Bitcoin as being the ultimate red line for you.
Yeah. And, in that example too, right? We can use their bad intentions to help part of our plan. And then when it gets to that level that get exposed, it just exposes them. And you're like, well, you can't really hold an argument. And it's very crafty how he weaved in the libertarian angle, being the kooks already as they are. And so it's very crafty, that message. But the message was to trust your leader, and we need a leader. And that leads to a very dark and dim road. And so that you can see that op is going to definitely implode at some point. But, we take the good parts of it. But back to the burn thing real quick, because I'll tell you my side of that, because in the beginning, Patrick Byrne was such an important figure in what he did for the financial system back before 2014. Okay. And so that's where
the first person to put Bitcoin on his balance sheet actually before.
No, so he was one of the first online retailers to accept Bitcoin as payment. So Overstock.com accepted Bitcoin as payment, which actually grew the network like leaps and bounds. Like he talks about it, how significant of a choice that was for him. But it was only that, okay? It was also him tokenizing Overstock on a Bitcoin blockchain ledger as well through this system I talk about, Counterparty, all the time, about tokenization. And that entire story is what led the Peter Strzok investigation and the corruption of the SEC to go after him. And he was the one that exposed the securities lending aspect of Goldman Sachs, where he proved that like 95% of Goldman Sachs revenue came from fractional reserve lending of securities. And if you understand this entire picture and you understand what's happening with tokenization and Wall Street at this point, that thing that happened in the past is going to come back, because we're seeing what's happening with the naked short selling of Donald Trump's stock, right? TMTG and all these other ones. We're seeing what happened with GameStop. Okay. We're seeing what's happening with, the MicroStrategies, and we're seeing what's happening with Bitcoin. And there is a lot of people that aren't going to be able to deliver the shares if this financial system blows up. Okay. Right. And the fallback and the replacement for that is tokenization. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but that thing that happened that was created in the past is again what just gives me this. Okay, that was plus 1,000. This fucking Venezuelan shit, I don't even care. Whatever he's doing, he probably got called in to do whatever. Right, doesn't matter. And so that's kind of my at least rebuttal into where I look at things, to where I'm like, well, there's this data point in the past that's a very strong measured data point that is unfuckwithable, that you can't compare to what's happening now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more point on the MAGA sifting. You mentioned this earlier. You mentioned the word you used was Trump allowing this. So in the context of Fuentes and whatever other figures, MTG was on Badlands recently talking about a tax revolt. I mean, that's based. I don't, and with Byrne, with MTG, with any of these people, I certainly don't, even when I'm shitting on that Twitter thread on Wednesday night, that isn't me in my own mind casting final judgment on these characters. It's just looking at, I look at what is the deployment I'm looking at, and does it make sense? And it doesn't, right? But it might be the point for it not to make sense. And I'm totally open to a lot of those kinds of things. So we've had a lot of sifting within MAGA. Even, I don't know if you saw the clip. I tried to pull it up. I couldn't find it before the show, but Trump was asked about Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson, and he basically said, the people have to decide. Let the people decide. So you used the word allowing earlier, and I agree with you. But I wonder, just in your words, what you think about this whole MAGA MAGA schism, MAGA shit going on in 2025, it feels like Trump is very comfortable, is very aware of it, and is kind of allowing it to play out. That's how you saw it as well.
Yeah, Trump, he likes to fight. He wants to, he believes in pure capitalism, right? And he believes that the best of the best will ultimately win this battle through their truth and through their research and through them being, on board with a deeper meaning of what it is to be part of this species, and I think that's really what it's about. And so he's going to continually let these people fall on their swords. He's going to continually let these people get these big egos. Okay. And then at the end of it, like, these people are going to fall. Right. And he's, look at the Lindsey Graham out there talking about, we ran out of bombs. You see these people just constantly, when they get that ego in the back of the head, and Trump pumps them up on purpose. He wants to see how far they're going to go. Are you going to go that way, bro? Are you going to go that far? Wow. Okay. Keep going, buddy. Right. It's kind of like digging your own grave. But in my opinion, like, all this infighting or whatever you want to call it is just further proof that not everybody's going to make it, and that these people will be exposed. And even if it is simple as not understanding that story, that helps someone be like, wow, a lot of the shit's fake and gay, including the election system. And a lot of the shit I've been told is fake and gay. And so that helps a lot of people just in a small rug pull, right? Like, wow, like, these people on a Venezuelan boat saved the elections. Like, that, nowhere does that make sense to anybody's mind in a logical sense. Just like when I say, oh, like the Q-tards and I'm wearing a 17 hat, like, they can't even put that together. So whether it's, little microcosms of helping people awaken up through whatever level they're in, like, so be it.
Damn straight. Let's I'm gonna hit a soft disclosure ad for about a minute. After we get to that, I want to get into some actual plan shit we think might be going on, which also allows us to shit on some Bitcoiners as well, instead of just shitting on people that we like. So we'll grab that after the break.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real: tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient care, modern truth.
Soft disclosure.
Okay, let's shit on some Bitcoiners, but in a based way.
Oh, and I do that all the time as well. I love pissing on Bitcoiners.
You're equal opportunity. So what I think is so funny, and I think you feel this way, you just came at it, we came at it from opposite directions, is the MAGA people who hate Bitcoin maxis are missing half the puzzle. And then the Bitcoin maxis, I wouldn't say they hate MAGA people, but they think that they're idiots. And not just MAGA people. Normal people. People who lefties, Democrats, whatever. A lot of Bitcoin maximalists that are really well known. They're really smart. I observe a lot of them over the last couple of years, ever since you kind of broke down that gateway for me to start engaging with this stuff. I get a lot out of some of them, but it's like when you're, listening to Q content, you got to put the filter on, or MAGA content. You're like, all right, in the lens of MAGA or the Q drops, this guy's really based and has some information I can use. But man, you're missing some. If gold was going to be the answer, it would have been the answer when we did it. Like that, you don't really have to go too much further down that argument. But there's a lot of maximalists that they think, and I use Trump not because it's a God King thing, but because I think Trump really is this signal. Like, you are the rare Bitcoin maximalist who's also a Q guy. And you understand that Trump knows what is going on. We might not know what he's going to do, right? We don't know what the full plan is. But Bitcoin maximalists think Donald Trump is an idiot. And there are like maybe 2 or 3 of them over the last couple of weeks that I've seen start to be like, man, you know, for somebody who's such an absolute fucking retard when it comes to everything, he seems to have made all these back-end moves going back years that are setting up the perfect sort of transitionary system for Bitcoin that we didn't even think of in Maxi world. So why don't you tell us, G, like, what are they missing something? Is Donald Trump an idiot? Or maybe is this a bit of a, like, the plan is deeper than a lot of these Maxi people who think they figured out the whole monetary system understand?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been going on spaces recently and basically defending Trump and Saylor and all these guys for a while now. But it's funny, right? Because, you know, just be kind of honest, most of the Bitcoiners, the maximalists, the people that have found that signal are kind of like left-leaning, very trust associated, elections are real type people.
So
it's a very odd dichotomy, because here you have the MAGA, truth, freedom, sovereignty, but then you give them truth, freedom, sovereignty technology, they don't want it. And then you have people that are against truth, freedom, and sovereignty that like want this technology, but then they believe the rest of the shit. And yeah, it's so weird because it's compartmentalized in a way that I think is good in a sense. But yeah, you're right, because these Bitcoiners, right? They're like, oh, well, Trump released a shit coin, so that means he's a bad guy because him and his family are making all this money on this shit coin. And, you know, okay, that's one take. It's one way to take it. Or another way to take it would be, wow, how many people did Donald Trump onboard to crypto by releasing a shitcoin, right? Because nobody likes a purist Bitcoin maxi to come in and tell you're a dumb fuck and all this other shit that I do for people, right? Like nobody is going to resonate with that. But if you come in with a message of, hey, I've got this crypto and crypto bros, and let's bring all the crypto, like that's an act of love. Like he's saying to all these people, let's build the biggest fucking net possible to bring everybody into the crypto sphere. And I'm going to let everybody fucking play. I'm going to let all the shit coins play, and I'm going to let everybody have a fair competition, and I'm going to pump the money printer. And so some of those maybe not get debased as fast as, you know, as fiat. But at the end of the day, he's pushing everybody. He's pushing the culture towards the exits, right? Because this plan isn't going to happen in a day or two. This is a very long, and frankly, we need more of the youth to grow up a little bit. We need some of them to kind of understand how fucked the monetary system is so that they get into crypto, which a lot of them are. But they don't understand warfare. They don't understand the culture war. They think Donald Trump is another politician, which he's not, right? They have all these preconceived notions. A lot of these people took the jab, right? And a lot of these people are now talking about the midterms, right? And a lot of these people are now, it's funny now that I'm pushing them farther and farther, you know, because the taxation is happening, the inflation is happening, and they're talking about voting. And it's like, well, you can vote all you want, but at the end of the day, that's not going to really affect change in the way that provides a voluntary system of association versus coercion through the barrel of a gun. And so you're right. Like we're going to probably have to just stand up and not pay taxes at some point. Like that's the end goal, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's that's a lot to just kind of throw out there.
Well, there's a few things there. I mean, one thing, it definitely is an irony, and I've picked this up. I've consumed a lot of Bitcoin content over the last couple of years. Again, I'm able to compartmentalize. Like I come off fire and brimstone with some of these people, whether they're MAGA, fake MAGA, Bitcoin maximalists, whatever. But like I do believe strongly in the Bruce Lee thesis: take what works, leave the rest. Right? Like I can get something out of these people who understand financial systems in a way I do not. And I've really tried to educate myself on financial systems in the last couple of years, which has really helped a lot of my research about what I believe is a pincer going on between Trump and Xi Jinping against the banks. But, you know, maybe I didn't even mean to bring that up, but maybe that's an example of, I think, what's going on with a lot of Bitcoin maximalists. They can't accept a premise like that or even engage with it. So they miss all the things Trump is doing that fits into that premise, right? It's like, for them, the trade war is this bad thing, even though they secretly wish for it because it creates volatility. And yet, I've been putting forth the thesis for a couple of years now that Trump and Xi are essentially squeezing the banking system and the banking apparatus by doing this. It's like globalist corporations that are most affected by this trade war. It's also forcing this multipolarity, right? We see Russia, we see China, we see India, we see all these places talking about a multipolar world, they're now using the term multipolar alliance because the cowards don't want to say sovereign alliance. So they're saying multipolar alliance. Like, what is that? That's nodes, independent nodes in a cooperative network. Like, they're essentially, it's the first principles of what the whole Bitcoin network is. I'm sure you've seen, like 6 months ago, you had Vladimir Putin unprompted on stage addressing a question about American sanctions and European sanctions. He said, well, you know what they can't sanction is Bitcoin. And right, so it's like, my thesis is that Trump and these other leaders are giving each other the shielding to radically change their economic, trade, and eventually financial systems under the guise, like under the cover of, we have to. Because I think, like, you know, we would be on a show 2 years ago, and that was something I used to go, like, after you for. Not because I thought you were wrong, but because I was like, what is the pathway to get people to think we need to change our economic system besides just catastrophic inflation that might undo the whole point of it in the first place? And that's when I look at some of these economic things and these trade wars of going like, man, they've put a really good argument forth in 2025 alone without destroying the economy of saying, like, guys, we need alternative systems. Like, it's not working. The Federal Reserve right now, even to a lot of maxis, what they're not doing the thing all the maxis said that they thought they were going to do, right? Because it turns out that the bankers are actually just evil and they're trying to destroy, you know, a fair economy. But Bitcoin maximalists were trusting that the Fed was going to cut rates because that's what they should do. That's what makes sense, right? So that's rambling as well. But I guess my realization of a lot of these maxis is they can't see what's right in front of them, because seeing what's right in front of them would force them to acknowledge that Donald Trump might actually know what he's doing and that, like, Russia and China might not be evil. And before you, like, if you can't engage with that as a paradigm while the EU is telling you that Bitcoin is evil, like as the perfect reverse indicator, then you're just going to think that, like, we have to rely on JP Morgan to save us. And it's become very strange where, like, I think there's a lot of OG maxis that you would know who are noticing that. And they're like, guys, like, you're talking about JP Morgan more often than, like, first principles these days. And you might have kind of gone down a weird path here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if you do too much research, you get caught in this weird rabbit hole that you never get out of. Or if you don't do enough, it's the same thing. And I think what a lot of people have is these reverse indicators, like my weighted system. They've done the same with Trump and said, oh, well, he created a vax, the military's bad, there's no way out. Right. And the problem with their scenario is, like, you know, a lot of Bitcoiners would wish more people would wake up to Bitcoin quicker. We hope and pray that more people across the world start picking up this technology and using it. But that's not the world we live in. That's not happening, right? It's a very slow, painful process to turn out Bitcoiners. And so what you have is these emotional reactions, very, very feminine reactions to certain policies, like Trump giving Argentina a $20 billion, swap line, right? Or Trump creating a stable coin, not going full Bitcoin, or Trump still not buying for the strategic reserve, and they're like, well, he's a bad guy. He's working with JP Morgan and Larry Fink, and he's centralizing it. And, to the contrary, he's doing everything else besides that, But if you don't look at it from this warlike posture to where The beginning is we live in a fiat currency full of fake corruption, death, and despair. To the other side of that, we will be on a Bitcoin standard of abundance in the golden age. Okay. And everything in between is rug pulls, unless you see the dots that get us from, fiat to this other side. And the quicker we do it and the more disruptive it is, the more people die, the more things break, the more, wars and shit's going to break out. Okay. And that's a fact. And so when Bitcoiners get upset that it's not going fast enough or Trump isn't pure enough, right? They don't understand that someone on the other side of the military is running the AI algorithms and says, if Argentina's financial systems break, 1 million people fucking die, right? Yeah. They're not thinking in those terms. They're not looking at the consequences, right? They're just like, oh, I'm a purist. It's a virtue signaling because they think they're pure and all wise when real badass motherfuckers are making tough fucking decisions that people's lives are on the line. Yeah. And it's kind of it's just irritating because this is so much bigger than their little feeble brains can comprehend. And they think they're a genius because they figured out Bitcoin before the next person. That's not it, man. And I get kind of heated about it because it's like, man, these people are just like fucking morons.
Man, I love that. And, I don't mean to shit on him. He's just an example I'm using. There's this guy, Danny. I don't even know his full name, but Danny, he does a podcast. It's a good podcast called What Bitcoin Did. I know he took it over from the previous guy who did it. That was kind of before my time in Bitcoin. He's an English dude who has good conversations, brings a lot of voices on to talk about Bitcoin, but he's certainly kind of an OG, or he's considered an OG. And man, I was watching an episode like a couple of weeks ago, and it made it almost hard for me to watch anything he does after that, because he was arguing with a guy named American Hodl about American gun rights. And I was like, I had to pause it and rewind it. Like I'm watching the kid I'm letting my son absorb Bitcoin podcasts while he's playing. Nice. Oh, wow. That's part of the deal. But so I'm rewinding and I'm like, surely on one of the most Bitcoin maximalist podcasts I've ever come across, there's not an argument right now between the host of the podcast arguing in favor of Australian gun laws. And he's a Brit living in Australia. So he was like, listen, I live in the most cucked place in the world. It's not cucked enough. I'm going to move to a place my place owns and has cucked. Like Australia, I would say is in first place in terms of police state. Like we learned that during COVID. I think they've taken the mantle from Canada. I spent time in Canada during COVID. It was bad. It was not Australia bad. So anyway, just all of which is to say, it is absolutely bizarre, and I think a sifting needs to take place within the maxi sphere as well. When you've got, just like in the MAGA sphere, you've got prominent voices who don't seem to really understand what the fuck is going on, or what is necessary, rather. You've got these OG Bitcoin maximalists talking about, I don't understand the American obsession with individual rights and the First and Second Amendment. Like, holy shit, man. You might have missed the point of Bitcoin. But anyway, that's just a comment. But that was big for me because it wasn't some random guy. I'm like, this guy is emblematic of how a lot of people who fancy themselves like Bitcoin maximalists, and you are like a black sheep in that world, when all you're saying is basically individual power projection, individual rights and sovereignty is important, stop trusting the state. And you've got, I'm sympathetic to Bitcoiners who are like, listen, if we can get the state on board, we're getting the Trojan horse of Bitcoin in the gates. I'm very sympathetic to that argument. I think it's a logical argument. That's not a Danny argument from What Bitcoin Did. Like, some of these guys are buy your ETF, pray to the gods of JP Morgan, hope for lower interest rates, and follow M2 money supply. And it's like, that's what being a maximalist is now? I don't know. Strange times in that world.
Yeah, and I think, all those investments at some point are going to be safe, however that plays out to a degree, but it may be a very watered down derivative of the actual layer one. And, they're attacking Michael Saylor now too, because he's, coming up with these gigs with JP Morgan and, and it's just like, and then you got the flip side of that where the MAGA movement is now, saying Satoshi is Epstein, right? Or he donated to Core back in the day, right? It's completely asinine. But yeah, like this is a smooth transition. A smooth transition takes time. And the maxis I think some of them are starting to wake up a little bit. But we still look like crazies, man. I'm still the Q crazy black sheep guy in the Bitcoin community. I'm still the crazy Bitcoin guy in the Q community, right? It's still that wacko narrative. But at the end of the day, it's like people become GMoneys. But the whole point of this is talking about that Bitcoin isn't even a coin at all. It's not about the money. It's about power. At the end of the day, this technology is about power. Full stop. Right? Elon was just talking about today to where we might not even need money in the future, right? It's not even about that. It's that our system is so fucked because of the years of trust we have given people that do not deserve our trust, that have bent us over time and time again. The Brits are going to see it. I see they're increasing taxes over there for anybody over a certain threshold. And they're going to have to, it is a worldwide digital 1776. And everybody's going to get bit power, right? At the freedom they deserve, right? At the slavery they deserve. And that's just really what it's going to be. It really can't go any quicker. You just had China say they're going to ban it for the 100th time and the price goes down again. I mean, they're going to keep playing these games as long as they can. But at the end of the day, you can't stop this. And the good guys controlling this are ensuring that as many people make it to the finish line as possible with the least amount of casualties.
And I want to talk about that in a few minutes in terms of the parallel plans going on here. But you kind of teed it up there. I saw a tweet of yours earlier. People in this audience might find interesting. Where is it? Right here. We've got why is Q, the Fed, JP Morgan, Epstein, and Bitcoin back in the news lately? So this was obviously... Everybody knows John was named in the New York Times hit piece, the latest one on Q. Unfortunately, I didn't make the cut on that one, but I did make the cut in NPR. I'm an official QAnon influencer, according to NPR, which is funny for the Q community. But what did you mean by that? We've got, I think I saw people in chat saying this as well. JP Morgan's in the news. Trump's in the news always. Epstein, Bitcoin. All orbiting each other at the same time, like you just said with Saylor.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of take this kind of brought me right back to the Q drops. And there's a specific drop that talks about, I think it's Q187, that literally talks about the creation of the Federal Reserve was really after the Titanic sank. Okay. And so if you understand that JP Morgan was a financier for the building of the Titanic, and that the Guggenheims and three very prominent, powerful people were very opposed to the creation of a central bank. Okay. We're on that boat, and that JP Morgan canceled his, canceled the trip, didn't get on the boat at the last minute, mind you. Okay. And then what did you have, right? You had a false flag, a 9/11 on a boat, probably. Right? Why won't they go research what happened to the boat? Well, because it's a big fucking explosion that happened on that thing. Right. And then, you get it where, so JP Morgan bought this boat, and then the central banks that JP Morgan is part of created the Federal Reserve on the night of 1913. Right. And then you see like all the Epstein stuff that is coming out, that came out in the Q drops, right? Everybody thought Q was about pedophiles and, people eating babies and all that crazy stuff. And then you have Trump. And so to me, they're just like this is the plan. Like this, 187 is probably one of the most like picturesque of the entire major plan, because it talks about first time in 100 years, we're ready to clean house, a clean temple, right? What did Jesus do in the temple? Because they were changing the money. That's a clean house. We're ready to clean house and become America again. That's what this drop is all about. It talks about Titanic, Rothschilds, Epstein, sex tapes. And to me, it culminates everything kind of coming back to Q in a sense as well.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I'm big on that as a narrative guy. I'm big on sometimes not pretending I know how the whole puzzle looks, but definitely picking up on narratives, specific words or stories, like all orbiting the news at the same time. Kind of adjacent to this, something I thought was kind of interesting because we mentioned some of the issues MAGA people and Q people have with maxis, and then maxis have with them. And all the while, in between all this Epstein, JP Morgan type of narrative, we've got Eric Trump going on like every podcast he can go on. He won't shut up about how Bitcoin is the future of the monetary system. And for anybody whose feelings get hurt by it, I don't know if he's going to be right or not, but he talks about like gold is not the answer. Like he goes in the paint super hard against gold. Now maybe it's an up, right? But like there's a lot of people that are all in on Trump putting us on the gold standard. Maybe if that's the case, Eric Trump is out there like telling you to avoid like that's not where we're going. But I noticed in the last couple of weeks in particular, and this did start to trickle into the maximalist space and the Q space. So you used the word bridge earlier. Some of these Eric Trump clips were talking about not just Bitcoin, but we're talking about being debanked by, major banks such as JP Morgan. I don't know if JP Morgan was specifically one that debanked the Trumps.
Well, the big one was Jack Mallers got debanked by JP Morgan.
Jack Mallers
just the other day, right?
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, Jack Mallers is a Bitcoin maximalist kind of OG type of guy, runs a big company. He's in business with the Lutniks, actually, right? The sons of, so he's involved in that whole tether.
He also helped bring El Salvador on board with strike and everything else. So yeah.
Mallers is great, by the way. If you guys are ever looking for he does like a Monday podcast. And he's just got great ways of translating
and it's
this
funny.
stuff.
Like I think Mueller's is kind of one of those characters too, where you're like, here's this kid that I don't really know how much tech experience he really has, and he onboarded the country of El Salvador, and like he just happened to get a JP Morgan letter the day before like all these Epstein files come out, and it just seems all kind of too coincidental for me. So I kind of like call him our favorite LARP, to a degree.
He gets mad about that, but it is odd, like because. I was just complimenting him, but he genuinely strikes me as very smart and like just my intuition as a trustworthy guy. Like I just like him. He seems like he's a real maxi. He seems like.
Yeah, he definitely
But he does kind of do that whole like Trump doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. But he tries to get away from those topics really quickly. And there is part of me sometimes when I'm watching his podcast where I'm like, man, you're in business with the Lutniks. Like, you're going to tell me that you don't know that maybe Trump knows what's going on here because all the guys you're in business with are in like positions under Trump where they're going to be putting together the future monetary system of the United States. I don't know. That's
so he just says some funny stuff like I'm going to buy more Bitcoin than Sailor, which is not going to happen, right? It's just kind of funny how and I love the guy too. I troll him because he promised to come on Rug Pull Radio at a Bitcoin conference, and he still is like avoiding me
because he knows you're going to ask him about software.
I know, probably.
Let's get into some before you get out of here. Let's get into some Satoshi shit. So we definitely saw some FUD recently about that Epstein either is Satoshi or. I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah. So what happened was there was some fund, I forget, that donated to Bitcoin Core. It wasn't even until I think 2015 or 2016 where Satoshi was long gone by then for the most part. And so they just said he contributed like $100K to the Bitcoin Core devs or something. And it's just, but on all, of course, it's funny because you see the bots come out and they make these fake emails that show like Epstein was literally talking to Satoshi or had a meeting with him. And then it all kind of basically just culminates into like a lot more FUD, and it's just more noise out there. And so it doesn't matter. But it's just a fun little psyop I think they played because a lot of some of the MAGA folks fell for it too. Oh my God, Epstein is involved in Satoshi, and I knew it. And
Oh yeah, I saw the victory laps, and I saved those fucking laps. I saved those victory laps. I screenshot that shit. I got a nice little folder for everybody pushing fucking ham radios, and how the plan is gonna be for us to hole up in our fucking basements with ham radios, guys. That's what the Q drops we're getting at, right? We're gonna show you a golden age. We're gonna show you a world unlike anything you've ever seen before. Forget executive orders Donald Trump is signing about the Genesis mission and an AI future. Forget Elon Musk's master plan of abundance for everybody. None of that is plan involved at all, right? We're gonna sit in our basements with a 5-gallon drum of freeze-dried survival food with ham radios and calm each other. That's what the future. Anyway, so I'm not very nice to these kind of people, but a lot of people like that were taking victory laps.
And I love this new Genesis AI project. I think we should probably talk. We can probably talk about that, because there was. If you look at did you pull up that clip or that Q drop where I put in the Manhattan AI project, literally in a Q drop? Because they were all talking about. They were all talking about this Genesis AI stuff that would bring all the greatest scientists, all the greatest engineers, all the greatest minds, and basically they called it an AI Manhattan project. Like literally, Trump's Department of Energy said that.
Incredible.
And here you get this drop on no less than 11/11, right? Burning Bright. We know the 11/11 stuff, and and that's the thing too, is like you can take some of the Q drops and just assign more value to certain statements than the rest of that's even in there. The AI Manhattan Project, 11/11, and do you believe in coincidences are like 3 blaring examples of like, holy fuck, like what is going on that is even beyond the realm of our comprehension? Because, I think a lot of us that believed in the Q drops believed that this was a biblical transformation, right? And that even though, the unicorn puppy dog ice cream believers are, from our perspective, unreasonable and not possible, like maybe we do get to some kind of, Utopia version where we're still going to have, some bad people in it, but we're going to basically ascend our race to a better place, man. And I like to be an optimist in all this stuff, because like, what else is there?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This this Manhattan Project stuff is very signal to me. For anybody who missed this, this was last week, November 24th. President Donald J. Trump unveils the Genesis mission to accelerate AI for scientific discovery. So you had the DOE involved here, strengthening America's AI dominance. But here's a couple little directives. Just take this, for everybody who's in our audience who does, to your point, G, it's like, what did the drops say? If you're a Q drop person, said think bigger, right? Think bigger than you've been thinking. Again, thinking bigger doesn't mean you're going to be squatting in your basement with a ham radio. It's just not what it means. If it does, then the plan sucks. Sorry. But when you see executive orders, or this isn't executive order yet, but it is, I'll show, it is adjacent to several executive orders. It's following on the back of several executive orders about nuclear energy transition, fusion technology, and supersonic technologies. So think Operation Warp Speed. Those are executive orders that are already in place. By the way, NASA put out a video of a supersonic plane they're testing 2 weeks ago on YouTube that like nobody really was paying attention to. And again, I think that's disclosure.
And this is just all so amazing because, we live in a place of scarcity, right?
Yep.
We live in a place of forced scarcity because technologies are not allowed to move forward. And a lot of this Tesla technology is going to be released. And, now they have an excuse for it. Well, you know what? AI figured out cold fusion, and now we can do it at scale for very cheap, right? Or AI figured out a reason for this new cure, or AI did this. And so now there is a disclosure method through which they don't have to totally declare where it came from, in a sense. They can sneak stuff in, I think, here and there to release this technology out to the wild, open source it, have everybody get on board. And the greatest thing about it is that now we have a protocol that feeds all this productivity into that nobody can control. And I believe AI is a complete rug pull on the statists that control everything, and that they are freaking out because a credit-based system cannot survive deflation. And AI is going to bring the most massive transformation of deflation that this world has ever seen. What does that mean? That means the cost of marginal goods of every single thing on the planet go to zero, which means in the future, having a job will be optional. Literally, this is how groundbreaking this stuff is. And people will go, GMoney, this sounds like utopia. I can't trust the algorithms. I can't trust Bitcoin. It's just doom and gloom. And how are you going to do this? And it's like, well, there is a person in the control of the helm that truly believes we can get to this level. And so I'm going to take that stance and I'm going to support that.
Well, this is exactly to that point. Let's just read a couple of things from this statement, because again, for Q people, for MAGA people, you want to take Trump's promises at face value. Well, then you got to take these at face value too, and listen to some of the shit that he's saying. The Genesis mission charges the Secretary of Energy with leveraging national laboratories to unite America's brightest minds, most powerful computers, and vast scientific data into one cooperative system. The order directs the Department of Energy to create a closed-loop AI experimentation platform that integrates world-class supercomputers, blah, blah, blah. So it's creating a framework, but what's it for? Priority areas of focus include the greatest scientific challenges of our time that can dramatically improve our nation's national, economic, and health security, including biotechnology, critical materials, nuclear fission and fusion to energy, space exploration, quantum information science, semiconductors, and microelectronics. So just little stuff, right? So I always try to go bicameral with this. On an actual level, they're telling you that we believe AI, if you put it into these loops, it's like a perpetual engine, if you think of AI that way, right? AI, and this is what, there's so many doomers, and I deal with it all the time about the AI stuff. I completely agree with you. Ironically, what brought me into a positive view of AI was my narrative reverse indicators of going, what has programmed us all with an utter fear and recoiling from AI? Hollywood, right? Like Hollywood and the media. So this whole community will be like, man, Hollywood, bunch of pedophiles. They've been programming us for 100 years. And it's like, when you think of AI, what do you think of? You think of Skynet, you think of Terminator, you think of iRobot, you think of Asimov, like you think of all this kind of stuff that is the worst possible implementation of what AI could be. Now, why does the entire mainstream zeitgeist want you to be terrified of what AI is going to do to you? And then you've got Trump's administration here saying, yeah, so we're going to chain up AI into a self-fulfilling feedback loop, and we're going to task it with solving the most difficult tasks in the history of mankind. And what people don't get, who haven't really studied this stuff, is that's exponential. Like, these are exponential loops. So that's on the actual level. But on the narrative level, I actually lean toward you, and we're never going to know this for a fact. I believe this is the perfect disclosure vehicle for all of these technologies, right? Because you can just say, hey, we have this exponential technology. We told you it was exponential. AI is increasingly being released to the public in exponential framework. So by 2027, everyone in this audience is going to be using it, even people that don't think they're going to be using it. Right now, they're thinking of AI as a chatbot. Like, it's going to be doing a lot more than that, guys. Oh, yeah. You're going to probably by next year or 2 years from now, you're going to increasingly see cars driving around with no driver in them. Like, if you haven't been in a self-driving Tesla, it will change the way you see the world, but I've said that a million times. So that's going to be going on. But I think that I think it could actually be both. So I think patriots, quote unquote, know what's hidden, right? With technologies, cures, all these things out of the drops. And they don't only have to use AI as a vehicle, they could actually prompt AI into figuring it out. Yeah. Right? Like that, because I was trying to think of, is there a middle ground where they're not actually lying to us? That AI discovered this? And I think maybe AI will discover it, but it's going to be given some very helpful prompts by the Genesis missions. That's kind of how I think of a middle ground there, discovery and disclosure.
Yeah, and think about what else this is kicking off. Like, this is telling the entire world, you better start doing the same, because we're all in competition now. Not only that, but we're all going to be in competition for a very scarce asset, the scarcest asset on the planet, which is Bitcoin. And then all these different countries are now going to be trying to figure out the cheapest ways of energy production, right? They're going to all try to figure out, hey, how can I actually produce energy cheaper, faster, and then eventually give it to people for free? That's we're dealing with Kardashev level, ascension here in the species, to where we can harness as much of the world's power from all different sources of energy as we can. It's all about energy. It's always been about energy. Energy is the life seed of our entire race. And, it's going to bring abundance. It's going to bring peace. It's going to bring all these different things to people. And I just, what's funny is, the Bitcoin maxis actually mostly kind of side with the Magadonian doomers on this AI stuff as well.
They think AI is coming to get us.
So they're kind of on the same page, funny enough, on this stuff. But this is kind of it. But think about the word Genesis itself, right? Like in the Bible, Genesis was like literally fiat lux. I am assigning this and making it, so, right? And in a way, right, the bankers have taken the role of God in assigning value to things by either controlling the supply of it or making scraps of paper worth something that they're not. And so this Genesis is almost like the good guy reset. They're going, you know what? We're Genesising over, and this is ground one. That's why the Genesis block is called the Genesis block in Bitcoin. That's why this Genesis AI is taking over, right? Like, there will be a world where it's literally before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin because of all this technology and everything that happened. And so I think it's intentionally named that for a good reason, that we are giving a clean slate to humans, and we're going to try to help them out this time.
I completely agree with you, and I'll add something to that. So people in my solo section like a month ago, I was like, something, for me, a lot of the times it's language coding, because I was a big, I studied etymology and the origins of words. So people be like, oh, you were an English major? Like, why would you study your own language? Like, no, I studied the origins of the language. And I think that's why sometimes I catch, not comms, but important deployments that other people don't. Genesis, as you just pointed out, it's big. I do think it is meant to evoke biblical undertones. And again, you read that White House message on the Genesis program in the context of biblical undertones and the Q drops of talking about showing you a new world and everything. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But one step further, I filed away this little announcement from October. I don't know if you saw this. The Army announces Janus program for next generation nuclear energy. And, we've been talking for a few years about, I really went down this nuclear energy rabbit hole. Part of that was prompted by General Steve Quast, who has been putting that bug in all of our ears for some time of saying, you really want to keep your eye on nuclear over the next few years. You led this section off by talking about the Manhattan Project. A lot of my writing in 2024 was about that I think we're heading toward an inversion of the Manhattan Project. I think the original Manhattan Project was designed to make us afraid of nuclear energy, because nuclear energy is what can free us from the system that we are in. And then we have the Janus program by the United States military. And what's the Janus program, people? Oh, it's just deploying micronuclear reactors, which 10 years ago didn't exist and weren't a thing, and that General Quast was telling us about 2 years ago, deploying them to all U.S. military bases around the country, and eventually for civilian use. What does the Bitcoin network run off of? Energy. What would be the cleanest energy? But here's why I bring up the language coding. Janus just really hit me when it, and I filed it away.
It was like an Iron Man thing, right?
Well, it is a character arc from the Iron Man comic books. Okay. But the most literal interpretation of this, ancient Roman religion and myth, Janus is the god of beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, and doorways.
Wow. It's got a 17 underneath that too.
He is usually depicted as having a double-sided head. So you might say bicameral, which would be my favorite word. So, to tie that together, we've got the military announcing the Janus program, which is all about nuclear energy, and they named it after the Roman god of beginnings, transitions, and endings, a two-headed bicameral god moving from one era to another. And then a couple weeks later, Donald Trump comes out with the Genesis mission, which is being run by the Department of Energy. Like, Department of Defense is about Janus, Department of Energy is about Genesis. I think there's something there.
And what's the only department with the Q clearance is the Department of Energy, right? I mean, it's all about energy. It's all about, and this is all where it's going, man. It seems, and again, these are like, data points that we can assign a lot of value to, in my opinion, right? Because they structurally lead to this golden age of abundance that has kept us, the current system of proof of stake and fiat money has kept us from this entire time. So,
yeah.
I even think, I will say one more thing about this. I even think that by the end of Trump's, what does he have? Like 3 more years left or something?
Yeah.
We could almost put in another Biden or something, and that the system itself would just die off because of everything that's being done now. Trump could just leave and like the system would just collapse on its own. Like he wouldn't even need to be there to direct anything. You ever think about that?
I'm starting to think about that. I have actually been starting to think about that because, man, no matter how hard I rack my brain, I'm like, I don't think I can get on board with getting super excited about saving the future because of the 2028 election.
Right.
I just don't care. Like, you're not going to get me back in that humiliation ritual. So if I'm looking at that and saying, okay, I'm not a doomer, is there a plan here? Yeah, maybe it's more about rendering the system less and less important. And, maybe there'll be a 2028 election. I mean, hey, if it's Donnie again and we get I think that's a rug, but like, it'd be fun.
Right.
If he was like, we just need a little bit more time. And then we'll put JD in there in 2032 and you guys can completely ignore the fact that he ever existed. So yeah, I could see that happening, we're going to have to, if we are actually moving into a Janus program, cheap, almost free energy system built on this ledger or backed by this ledger, why on earth would you need a government? Or at least you don't need one that has power over you, right? Like maybe the word government transitions into like an administration and it like, and I mean that literally, like
service provider.
Yeah, exactly. Like a service provider, accountants, like you account for the system.
Yeah, and at that point, there's no need for taxes and there's no need for politicians at the end of that road. Literally both. People just get to live how they want to live. Look, there's still a lot of stuff that's got to be sorted out to some degree, but the end moving point is really that goal. And it's beautiful to see because, people keep talking about these politicians and voting and it's going to affect them. And it's like, if AI is going to replace 90% of the work and jobs out in the regular public, why don't you think it's going to replace government employees for whatever? Like, is that some sacred profession that AI wouldn't take over? It cracks me up how that's never put into the conversation.
Well, and you can argue, and I've seen so-called experts argue this, that the professions that are the most susceptible to the early stages of AI are things like law and government, right? Because ostensibly, what is a judge supposed to do? Like, if they were the best judge in the world, a good person, they are supposed to interpret the law. What is the law? It's a code. It's called a code, right? Like, and people, there's a recent dystopian movie that somebody suggested for a story hour. We haven't done it. It's with Chris Pratt, but it's all about him being judged by an AI, like judged for murder by an AI. And it's supposed to be this dystopian thing. It's like, that's way better than a person.
Yeah.
if it's not an evil AI, right? Of course, there's caveats. But the idea is like, don't you want, if you're telling the truth, don't you want to go into a court and have an objective legal system looking at the code that we all agreed to implement? That's why I actually think it's not going to be a thing where there's no law. I actually think it might be a thing where we actually have fair and real law for the first time, because everybody will actually be bound by it. Like if we have a consensus mechanism and we agree, like you can't fucking take my idea. You can't rewrite my book that I wrote just because you fucking stole it from me. Like we'll be able to go into an AI court and say like, look at this, look at the timestamps. I did this first. Okay, here's what it spits out. Right now, we go in front of a human being who interprets the law based on the argument between two other human beings whose incentives are completely misaligned to the truth.
But see, even backtrack a little bit. You don't even have to get to that far, because you'll know ahead of time, I better trademark this or tokenize this idea from the get-go. And then you don't have to submit your plans to some, board to approve your patent. Patents are actually a thing of the past, but you can definitely like assign value to your person, your data, your whatever, and then tokenize it. And then you won't even need a judge at that point, because they'll be able to decide what's authentic versus not authentic. And that's really, at the end of the day, what's going to be a problem, is because people won't be able to tell any authenticity at the end of the day. And how do you scale Bitcoin? And that's why tokenization is such a huge piece of this that is even Bitcoiners don't understand. That the tokenization is going to absolutely explode and provide this security really for the entire world.
Which Lutnick's one of the main guys talking about that. I wanted to hit you with a couple more things before you get out of here.
Yeah.
There is, you mentioned this Elon clip. I want your thoughts on this, because this is a guy who has played coy for a few years. So a quick Elon clip on Bitcoin.
Currencies, if you will, that are physics-based. So energy is the true currency. This is why I said Bitcoin is based on energy. You can't legislate energy. You can't just, pass a law and suddenly have a lot of energy. It's very difficult to generate energy, or especially to harness energy in a useful way to do useful work. So I think that probably we won't have money, and probably we'll just have energy, power generation as the de facto currency.
I love the look at the end. I was like, this guy is out of his depth. He has not read the drops. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, this all really comes back to soft war, in my opinion. And, Elon's known about this for the entire time. He's had to keep his cool. He's had to play these games with the network and do whatever he's had to slow the adoption of Bitcoin and help bring along as many people as he can for the culture. But this is language that is definitely stepping up his, attitude towards it in the public sphere, which, at some point action will follow, right? Like he can't just keep talking about this stuff, because he is a true believer to where he will put, definite resources into this architecture to bring it forward. But energy, like I said, we all are scarce beings with the amount of energy we have on this planet, and the amount of energy we produce should be able to be encapsulated in a system that nobody else can control. And that's really what the system is about, is it's about slavery and the control of the entire planet through the financial system. And when you give people back their power to own their own energy in a system like that, you now, right, like have the ultimate authority. You now have power. Power is now back with the individual, right? Politicians are going to be begging for sats on the street to fund some stupid pet project or idea. And so their DNA, people that grovel to the money printers and to authority and to rank, are dead. Okay. The only way in the new world you assign value is to proof of work. You have to prove your work. Instead of thinking of ideas and ways to steal from people every single day of the time of day, you're going to have to actually produce something. And what does that world look like when you don't have 10% of the population always trying to steal from people, right? Well, a lot of the DNA dies off because they just can't handle a world like that, because, their DNA is drawn towards incentives that make it easy for them to steal. And that's going to make it impossible in this new world. And so, it's a beautiful world that we're going to. But there's going to be some rug pulls along the way, and it's not going to be an easy ride. And Trump isn't going to save you. He's going to give you everything you have, and you have every toolbox that you need to exit. You just got to have a pair of balls.
I thought that Elon clip was really encouraging in terms of how we've been looking at and feeling crazy, looking at the convergence. Right, that's a word I use a lot, of like these parallel running plans, these ops within the larger plan of going, okay, there's the Trump layer, there's the Q layer, there's the Elon layer of energy and all this kind of stuff. Even culturally, through 2023 and 24, I was talking about Elon largely on the culture layer of bringing in that culture, especially from the left, from the quote unquote left, that were reachable. But he played coy. For anybody who's unaware, I think it was back in 2021 or something, Elon was one of the first corporations to put Bitcoin in the Tesla treasury, essentially, Tesla balance sheet. He then sold some, and then he got really irritated when people kept asking him about Bitcoin for a few years after that, and he kept talking about Dogecoin and everything. So G on the back end was always telling me like he's rugging people, like he's not going to come out and say it. And man, people have made the argument Elon just made to Elon on podcasts, and he ignores it. And here we are in 2025, and he's like, yeah, so I was thinking, he made headlines a couple of weeks ago at a Tesla conference by saying we might not have energy in the future, money in the future. And it went right over all the Tesla guys' heads. And to see him follow up with this and say, like, guys, that doesn't mean Bitcoin is not valuable. It means it's the only thing that is valuable. Because, again, it's infinite scarcity. It's the ultimate form of scarcity, proof of work, proof of energy. So it's, I think if he hadn't said the word Bitcoin, we would have tried to draw that line. The fact that he said it, I'm surprised. I'm honestly surprised and encouraged that we're at that stage where he's laying out the Tesla master plan of abundance. He's saying we're not going to need money in the future. And then he's like, Bitcoin is energy. That's a pretty good sort of triple threat.
Yeah, and the crazy thing, if you keep extrapolating that rabbit hole of understanding Bitcoin is energy, and you understand that the network, being a finite asset and finite resource, can hold an infinite amount of energy, okay, a scarce, protocol, a scarce piece of real estate can hold an infinite amount of energy. Do you understand what that means, right? One Satoshi can hold an infinite amount of energy. Right. And if you start playing with Grok and stuff, it says that when you can start storing infinite amounts of energy in a very small surface, you get time travel. Interestingly enough.
Well, remember I told you 2 years ago that in an offhand conversation, that was when I actually bought Bitcoin. You'd been telling me to buy it for like a year. And then it was or 10 months or so. And then finally we had a conversation and you mentioned time in the context of Bitcoin. And for me, that was the key. For that, I wrote an article called The Bridge in 2023. That's aging well. And Elon is all through that article.
Isn't it crazy how long we've been doing this?
It's weird, man. But I feel like, and everybody gets like a different piece, right? Like everybody comes to it and they're like, man, like you said all these things that you thought would have clicked with me. And then it was like time clicked with me, just because I thought, okay, if I extrapolate out into an infinite future, what would possibly be the most valuable thing? Finite time that is codified and finite and bound by energy. So I think Elon's telling you where we're going. And I wanted one more thing out of you.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've mentioned this on a show, even though we always are about to. And I saw you tweeted about it. So I saw this tweet from G earlier.
Oh, yeah.
So this was just a headline.
Yeah, it's funny. This is one I sent you, and you're like, I already grabbed it, dude. Don't worry. I already grabbed this one.
Yeah. So spoiler or not spoiler alert. I don't know if I said this on a show or not. Like a year ago, a lot of people know I have Lyme disease and all that stupid shit. And I was doing my own research into ivermectin, just learning about it. Can it help me? That kind of stuff. Like not in a COVID context. I was reading all these research papers and somehow I didn't know that like what ivermectin was and where it came from. For anybody who is unaware, the story of where ivermectin comes from is it is a bioagent, like an organism, a bioorganism that came out of a strain of Japanese soil that somebody found. And the somebody who found it was named Satoshi. And there's no last name associated with this famous scientist who discovered apparently a miracle cure to most organic bacterial infections. A lot of people in our audience probably know a lot more about ivermectin than I do. But a lot of them don't know that it was discovered by a mysterious man named Satoshi.
Well, no, he does have a name. He does have a name. Actually, he does have a first name. Or
okay.
Satoshi might be his last name. I forget. But
okay.
Yeah. So if you pull up that Q drop, actually, right, like this all kind of culminates with it. But it talks about like, what if cures already existed? What about the billions public, private, government provided to fund the cure development? And like literally these people are sick. And so if you think about that, you realize the billions of dollars that have been put into this stuff. And then you realize that most of these ailments of cancer, right, the biggest cash producing profits system of the sick industry, right? We don't call it healthcare, it's sick care. They're now going to say that they're redesigning a common deworming drug to kill cancer cells that was famously also, right, created or invented by a guy named Satoshi. And if you understand how parasites work, right, they latch onto a host, they steal small amounts of energy over time until they kill you. And, if you understand how the central banking works, that's literally the fiat money center. That's literally how inflation works. There's a host attached to you, and it's slowly stealing your energy over time until it kills you and takes all of that. And so I don't know about coincidences. That's a pretty deep one. And the only time that worm is mentioned in the Q drops is on 211 or 11.2. So another 11.11 kind of wormhole. It's actually a wormhole, I think is what the name of the worm is, but or the drop actually that mentions worm. But I thought that was also kind of funny because worm is obviously big in the Dune community and the Fremen and that entire storyline as well, but also included with the Q drops is another. You could call an 11.2 an 11.11 if you want to, right? All goes back to Covfefe. If you guys haven't read Covfefe, by the way, today is a Covfefe day, 11/30/2025. And so, yeah, man, I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing we're in.
I've got some Dune clips in the intro to the show, and I've been feeling the Paul Atreides clip lately. That's Not Hope. And what's funny is I don't see that clip or that quote as dooming like a lot of people take that. I take that as Paul Atreides is saying, stop fucking lying to these people. Start telling them the truth, because the truth is going to give them hope. Lying to them is not going to give them hope. It's not hope. It's lying. And to your point about Dune, I mean, the spice must flow. We've got the spice, and what does the spice allow you to do in the Dune universe? It allows you to transcend space-time and travel through wormholes. So like the scarcest substance in the universe allows its wielders to time travel. So man, who fucking knows? And I love my favorite thing about how about your interview now, like, man, 2 years ago or something with Sailor on Rug Pull Radio was when he went on a rant about Robert Heinlein and Starship Troopers and started saying you don't win in the way you thought you were going to win. I'm like, he came close to letting it out of the bag there. He just used fiction to do it, which I thought was great. And I love, I've always liked Sailor ever since you turned me on to him. And I like that he goes on these podcasts and he says, they're like, how did you learn to think the way you do? And he was like, yeah, engineering, everybody thinks of fantasy. He says, I read a lot of fantasy. And you need both. But yeah, the Satoshi rabbit hole, I thought I had discovered that. I was like, G and the boys, G and the Bitcoin boys. I'm like, guys, look at this. Satoshi invented the ultimate parasite cleanser. And they're like, yeah, we've been on that for a long time. But it's cool when you find that stuff organically yourself.
It is.
And then you're like, look at this shit. I found some signal. I cannot believe it's coincidence there.
I mean, the proofs just keep adding up over time. And, we've stacked so many of them at this point. We literally forget, right? We've been at this for so long that like the years that have gone by, we just kind of forget about all those proofs, but always fun to, pump the signal where we can.
Yeah. All right, man. What do you got going on lately?
Not much. Just kind of doing Rug Pull Radio Thursdays at 10:30 on Badlands, and then I'm hopping on Spaces quite often in the mornings. You guys also, if you're interested in getting involved in Bitcoin, you can go to my site 1776.love. You can download Jason Laurie's software thesis for free. You can download the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace for free by John Perry Barlow, and I offer consulting as well. People are interested. But that's really kind of it, man. Just kind of, waiting to see how this kind of goes. The fiat price is meaningless, right? If everything is based upon energy, right? The fiat price is not an accurate measure of the real value. And so, we're in this transition, and however long it takes, it's going to take. And, they can only keep the beach ball underwater for so long. And there's a lot of paper Bitcoin out there at this point, and the thing with that is that eventually someone, right, can't deliver the goods. And when that happens, things start to blow up. And we'll see how that transpires. And I think Trump's gonna have to bail a lot of people out. And he's gonna have to fire up that money printer. And I'm like all for it. I think the Bitcoiners get mad every time he fires up that money printer. But I'm like, hey, look, there's no going back now, and it doesn't really matter at this point anyway. He's just literally using their system to bring about the new system quicker. So stop complaining about it, you doomers.
I totally agree, man. I think the more energy he rapidly expels from the old system, the more it gets scooped up by the new system. So it's all about accelerationism. All right, man. Thanks a lot for joining. We'll have to do this again.
All right.
Yeah, guys, follow G on Twitter. Go to 1776.love. He couldn't be harmful if he named his website that. And he'll onboard you into being a true psycho. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you. Bye.
That was GMoney. Hope you guys got something new out of that. Great follow on Twitter. GMoney Pepe is his Twitter name, his X handle. I know we've got our certain follows, but I find that the G feed, it's a great complement to an InfoWar feed. I think the financial kind of audience that follows him don't really understand what he's doing. But if you approach his feed through the Q lens, through the MAGA lens, and the sort of truth community lens, the Badlands lens, you end up getting good bits of signal there. There was another one he had adjacent to the Satoshi thing I just mentioned right here. Says, it's all a coincidence, guys. Satoshi created Bitcoin with nuclear-proof U.S. military technology in his underwear while his mom was making meatloaf. There's no plan. We're all doomed. Everyone's going to die. These people are insufferable. So this is about the Epstein, Bitcoin, JP Morgan FUD. I got to respect the central narrative writers for the bad guys. They're getting pretty clever here. Like that. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're just getting so retarded. It's becoming entertaining, where it's like, so hold on. First, the Q drops weren't a thing or weren't important. Trump was this idiot who fell ass backwards into power. There was nothing to see with the Epstein op. Now we've gone all the way to the mainstream saying Trump is an evil mastermind in league with Jeffrey Epstein, who is secretly behind Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, I said this was foundational to my sovereign alliance theorizing, but you really can use negative indicators as it gets you closer to the truth, right? It might not get you all the way onto endgame truth, but it gets you way closer to it than you were before. So when a guy like George Soros talks about names 3 men as threats to global democracy, I think he added a 4th, and that was Mohammed bin Salman, which would make sense. Oh no, my son is getting up. He has a little toy in his crib that he will stand up and press it, and it like sings a nice song and lights up, which is really like my wife put that in there as her alarm clock, basically. He'll get up and just hit that thing at, oh man, it's only 11. Jeez, he usually doesn't do that till like 3 a.m. So anyway, I don't know if Mrs. Bright's in bed yet or not. He looks like he might be going back to sleep. What was I talking about? Chat. What was I talking about? Oh. I was talking about the Sovereign Alliance and saying that if George Soros is calling you a threat to global democracy, then he might be telling the truth. And also it might be a good thing. Like, do we want global democracy as George Soros would define it? So a lot of people follow me down that rabbit hole of Sovereign Alliance narratives. So then when you see, you know, NGOs, World Banks, JP Morgan, when you see all this FUD out there directed at Donald Trump, this audience knows to take that at face value. When you see that FUD directed at the Sovereign Alliance, we know to take that for what it is, a reverse indicator. And when, okay. Yep, he's awake already. Jeez. Anyway, she's got him. And when it is directed at Bitcoin, that should tell you something, right? So, I don't know. Does that make Satoshi part of the Sovereign Alliance? Does it make Jeffrey Epstein part of the Sovereign Alliance? Not sure about that, but it's interesting stuff. Again, and I really mean this. I know I've got my confirmation bias. Everybody, you guys have your confirmation bias, right? We all have Q confirmation bias. We have 17's confirmation bias. There are real 17's comms. I'm going to show you one that I think is one. But we all also have 17 confirmation bias. By the way, guys, as a random aside, I had a conversation with Grok a couple of months ago, and I asked it without any sort of leading. I said, are there any numbers that come up in conversation or as examples or statistically more so than other numbers that otherwise wouldn't make sense? And I was testing a confirmation bias theory, and the algorithm spit out to me that the number 17 is the most common number for human beings to select between 0 and 20, and even between 0 and 100. It's the most by like 8-to-1 ratio compared to each other number. Doesn't mean that 8 times it means it's 8 times as likely to come up as any other number. So what does that mean? I don't know, but I would suggest that part of that number, there is some magic around that number, some psychology around the number 17 that literally makes it come up more than other numbers in that set. So there is a real confirmation bias, and if you were trying to signal to people, you might select a number that comes up more often than other numbers because it's a constant sort of signal. So, you know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or that means that these aren't comms. I think sometimes they are not. But I also think it's possible that they chose that number. I mean, it's Q, of course, but kind of interesting that comes up so often. So yeah, you use those reverse indicators when you see the machine attacking something. It's usually a threat to them, right? The Bank of England, the European, what is it? The EMF? Is that what it is? EMF. The European. It's gonna bother me. European Investment Fund, maybe? I don't know. The EU is all in against Bitcoin while being all in favor of central bank digital currencies. I'm rapidly getting sick and deteriorating as I'm going solo, so I'm not going to hang out for too long. If you guys do have any specific topics, go ahead and send a rant in that I'll grab in just a few minutes here. But I did want to show you. Here's a 17. Speaking of. So we didn't really get to Bessent a whole lot here. Oh, there's G right under there. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, I don't know how many of you saw this, on October 31st, said, 17 years after the white paper, the Bitcoin network is still operational and more resilient than ever. Bitcoin never shuts down. Senate Dems could learn something from that. So, you know, I thought that was pretty interesting. The 17, I mean, it actually literally was 17 years ago, so that is what it is. But not quite yet, actually. It will be in January. But I think it's pretty interesting for a lot of the people that are like, Bitcoin isn't part of the plan, blah, blah, blah. Are you sure? Are you sure it's not? Are you sure that the Treasury Secretary under Donald Trump, unprompted, tweeting about how Bitcoin never shuts down in the context of a giant political scandal, is not part of the plan? How about on November 21st, when the same man was seen attending the grand opening of the Bitcoin-themed bar in Washington, D.C. called PubKey? You think it's just wants to show his support? Huh? I don't think there's maybe anything else going on there. The guy who said in November 2024, he sees a coming, quote, global economic reordering, and he wants to be a part of it. That guy who says he wants to rein in the Federal Reserve, be part of a global economic reordering, and is tweeting about how Bitcoin never shuts down. Not part of the plan. Here's a interesting guy. I know nothing about this guy, Scott Wiper. I saw this on GMoney's feed. This was about the plane deaths, mysterious deaths, central bank body count, kind of along the lines of the Titanic that G brought up earlier. I think most people in this audience are aware of the Titanic, JP Morgan, escaping that fate, all the rest of it. I'm sure Zach has done that. He says, historically speaking, when leaders propose alternatives to the currency of the private Western central banks, they die. In 2009, a group of incredible minds launched a currency in the most ingenious way, anonymously, with an eccentric cover story. He's referring to the creation of Bitcoin under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. And by the way, that being a pseudonym is not conspiracy theory. That is a fact. Satoshi Nakamoto was not a real name. It was admitted by the user to be a non-name, right? An alias. Myself, GMoney, people like Jason Lowry, many others, well, I shouldn't say many others, a growing subset of people do not believe that a random guy or even a small clutch of people created Bitcoin and released it on an internet forum. I believe it's part of a Patriot plan to go around central bankers in a sly and roundabout way. Maybe I can find that clip. Yeah. We're gonna send this to you guys. I mean, Jesus, I'm collapsing. Let me finish this tweet, and then I'm gonna show you guys a clip you might not have seen before to add some context to this. So the same incredible minds may have also invited a courageous billionaire to run for POTUS And unlike Lincoln, JFK, or McKinley, he would not have to propose an alternative currency because it was already growing in power simultaneous with his own. The new leader and the new currency would both hit their apex 17 years later, circa 2026. War is deception. All wars are bankers' wars, irregular warfare at its finest. I think that there's some tread on those tires. I like that little post by Scott Wiper there. I think we did go around them in a sly and roundabout way. And it makes sense, right? If your real war was on the bankers, you don't declare war on them. That doesn't go so well. One of the things I believe is genius about what Bitcoin is doing is the bankers are now investing in it. They're investing in the thing that is a cure to them, of them. They're investing in the thing that, if they keep investing in it, is going to render fiat currencies obsolete. And I think that's part of the game theory there. For anybody who's not heard that terminology, sly and roundabout way, it comes from Friedrich August von Hayek. Interestingly, this clip is 1 minute and 17 seconds long. And I thought this might be illuminating in the context of Bitcoin. This clip is from 1984.
The great trouble is the money wasn't allowed to develop further. After 200 or 300 years of coins, all governments put their hands and stopped any further developments. You were not allowed to experiment on it. Money hasn't been improved. Money has rather become worse in the course of time. Government said it must not develop any further. And what we have had since in development were matters of government inventions, mostly wrong, mostly abuses of money. And I have come to the position of asking, has monetary policy ever done any good? I don't think it has. I think it has done only harm. And that's why I'm now pleading for what I've called denationalization of money. I don't believe that we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. Because we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
If this gentleman could
So listen to that again.
Before we take the thing out of the hands of government, because we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
If this gentleman could understand the need for Bitcoin all the way back in 1984, you can take the time to...
So again, for anybody having trouble listening to that on podcast, he says, I don't believe we shall ever have good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government, because we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly or roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop. Vladimir Putin 6 months ago said the only thing that is immune to sanctions is Bitcoin. So as many feelings as it hurts, when we talk about it, I think it's very important. So, and it's important as a principle and as a technology. Here's another little cute little 17 I'll throw in for you guys if you're into that kind of thing. Get you juiced up, get you all hopped up on 17s before Q after hours. U.S. Department of Energy, the Genesis mission will mobilize all 17 DOE national laboratories, industry, and academia to build an integrated discovery platform unlike anything on Earth. It will catalyze new industries, create high-skilled jobs, and usher in a new golden era of American discovery. I don't know. Probably nothing. And then maybe one thing to end on, I wanted to end on here is why is it all about the money? And when I used to think about that question, wonder if it was all about the money. I would think of base instincts. I would think of greed. You know, like, okay, we can understand the bad guys want the money. They want to control the means of production. They want to control the means of production of money, which is what fiat is. Something of nothing through will, by decree. That's what fiat means. So it's not being made by anything. Why is Bitcoin, or why is the idea of true, scarce, measurable, verifiable money such a white pill for some people? You'd say that it's an uncorruptible system. It doesn't mean that corrupt people can't use that system. They will use it. It's just that they can't control it. And people have spent now 17 years trying to convince everybody that they can, but they can't. So, you know, they're going to be proven wrong every year. And, you know, we'll see what happens. But there's another term that a lot of people use, which is flywheel. They talk about some of these more future-minded Bitcoiners, which, you know, a lot of them are saying a bunch of stupid shit. But in the context of the Janus project and the Genesis mission and the idea of Bitcoin being integrated into whatever reset Trump and team are planning, I think the term flywheel really works. And I think it also shows you why you don't, I think you should probably own some Bitcoin, even though it's crashed today to 85,000. So maybe it was a rug the whole time. This is the day that it's over. But a flywheel, it distributes energy and stabilizes systems. That's what a flywheel is, right? It stabilizes a system by redistributing the energy, dissipating the energy. It strips the volatility out of the energy. The irony to that is that Bitcoin to now has been seen to the upside and the downside as the most volatile asset ever. I think literally it's been the most volatile asset ever that has survived this long. The idea in an ultra bull case remonetization situation or system is that Bitcoin becomes the base layer and it strips the volatility out of everything else. So everything enters through Bitcoin. It is settled in Bitcoin as a final settlement layer. That means value, but the key that a lot of people miss, and that I think is really key to understanding what's going on with the Janus project and with the Genesis mission, is literal energy, physical energy. The Bitcoin network works on physical energy. It is defended with physical energy. It's transacted with physical energy, stored with physical energy. The more exponential energy becomes or grows, the more impregnable the network becomes. Because as G said earlier, even if you're not talking in terms of monetary value, energy value of the network, which is known as hash rate, is going to exponentially increase. And via nuclear, via all these things they're going to do. So sometimes it's as simple as just like, think about the concept of a flywheel. You can just Google it. What's a flywheel? What's it do? A heavy rotating mechanical device used to store and release rotational energy, which helps smooth out the power delivery of machines. In engines, it acts as a mechanical battery, storing kinetic energy to keep the engine running smoothly between power pulses and to maintain momentum when the engine is idling. It absorbs vibration, providing a stable surface for a clutch and a smooth transfer of power to the wheels. Isn't that interesting? A smooth transfer of power. Where have we heard that before? I'm not saying that's a comm. I just think that's kind of a funny little note. A smooth transfer to a second Trump administration. So I think Bitcoin is a massive part of the future. And I think that many Bitcoin maximalists are wrong when they talk about how disruptive the future is going to be. I actually think Bitcoin, I'm coming to believe that Bitcoin is going to strip the volatility out of the transition to the golden age. It's the thing that is going to save markets rather than destroying them. So anyway, that's my thoughts, but we'll see what happens. Grab a couple rants here. And yeah, I know I'm monotone black hat. I said I'm sick. My throat hurts. Laney Lou is a monthly Badlands supporter. Appreciate that. Faux Show Yo sent $40 over. 50 minutes late, 50 behind on the talk clock. This one's for my boy GMoney, Chatelet brother, and this one's for you. It's 220s, Chatelet bro. Thank you, Faux Show. German patriot, libertarians, including Bitcoin people and conservatives, really fit well together. They just need to see the potential they have when they team up. That's true. Keith O'Higgins, for a true Genesis project, doesn't one of the co-founders' children have to kill his brother? The Sodom and Gomorrah Bitcoin will be fire. I don't know. It's a weird one. G. Fontes, ivermectin was discovered by Satoshi Omura and in collaboration with William C. Campbell at Merck, purified the compound and modified it into ivermectin. It won them the Nobel Prize. Could be how the Q security code was derived. Asked a group of 9 men at a conference table to pick a number 1 to 26, and the 17 was picked several times out of the hat. Yeah, man. There's something weird to it. But that's probably all I got, guys. I can't keep going here. I'm not feeling too great. But hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you got some hope out of that. Slap you around. That's how G delivers hope, right? He slaps you around a little bit. And then he's like, be more hopeful, bitch. You pussy. Stop being a doomer. And it hits people with whiplash because they're like, wait a second. I thought you were the doomer because you're being mean to me. And it's like, no, you're the doomer, you bitch. And I ain't going to abide you dooming in my presence. That's what it is. That's what the energy is. Okay? So shape up, you hypothetical straw man that I always invent to make a point against. But that was somebody listening to this show or watching it or who happened to cross it. You better shape up. We'll beat some hope into you the way God intended. Otherwise, I think there's pretty much nothing to the Janus Project or the Genesis mission. I think Trump's just messing around. I think he's actually ultra focused on Venezuela, and I think we were saved by Patrick Byrne in 2024. Saved our lives, saved the Republic. I don't think there's anything else going on. I think everything will be revealed in Twitter threads. There's nothing else to be done or to learn about. But anyway, other than that, there's some cool stuff going on. I will see you guys next Sunday night. I don't know who my guest is going to be yet. We'll figure that out. And am I forgetting anything? Again, if you guys did not receive a copy of Swordpunk and you did order it, first of all, there's a bunch of people who emailed us and said they ordered one and they did not. But there's other people who say they did and they did. Email realmrsburningbright@gmail.com with your information, and we can look up whether or not your book was shipped or if it's in my basement. And if, I don't know what to do for the people that just never reached out to give me their address, but who bought a book. It's not Amazon. That's not how Kickstarter works. I think Kickstarter threw some people for a loop. I get it, but I try to be really clear in that campaign of like how that works. It's not just a thing where you buy a book and it shows up. You gotta send me your stuff. You gotta answer a survey. Anyway, so there's that. And if you guys are interested in some reading, I put a couple things out over the last week. I put The Final Stage out, which is all about the curious case of intermittent de-escalation, which is all about Russia, Ukraine, and all that. And then The Sifting and the Signal, which should connect nicely to tonight's discussion, finding comfort in the chaos of the info war. go to burningbright.substack.com for any of that stuff, and enjoy. It's all free. As I always say, the war is a story. The story is a war. Act accordingly, and I will see you next time.
We were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here.
How many men have you killed, Merlin?
I don't know.
50? 100? Countless.
Countless has a nice ring to it.
And how many lives have you saved?
500,000. Population of King's Landing. Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
Our time has come. We prepared. We grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power, you were trusted to lead the Republic. But you were deceived. You assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
The visions are clear now. I see possible futures all at once. Our enemies are all around us. And in so many futures they prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such time, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
Forgive me. I did not see. I have failed you all. You will bring me. Captain Honor, I do not know what strength is in my blood. But I swear to you, I will not let the White City fall. Our people fail. Our people. Our people.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins.
No. Now it ends.